Chapter 415, Army of Undead, I Lord Dalar. Dalar was busy poking a severed head on his table when he heard a voice. He didn't have to turn back because he knew who it was, an apprentice he never wanted in the first place but got impressed by the knowledge he possessed about the undeads. Jonah. Jonah was dragging a dead body that reeked of putrid smell into Dalar's workshop. The workshop was a spacious hall, yet there was no empty space. Every nook and cranny had something. The wooden racks were lined up against the walls. Jars filled with weird eyeballs, body parts, black goo in bottles, dead bodies with countless cuts, and various tools could be seen in the room. After getting teleported to this dark mansion, Jonah entered into seclusion according to Dark Queen's instructions. 3 months later, he was able to reach Foundation Stage Level 10, and a few days cultivation away from reaching the body refining stage. Meanwhile, during his breaks, he worked with Dalar to find out more about the undeads and the alpha undeads. Their combined knowledge of undeads enabled them to come up with the most efficient way to kill the undeads. They were just a few days away from finishing the tests and let the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen know about the breakthrough. This was only a side project, though. The main project assigned to Dalar by the Dark Lord was to summon more powerful netherils from the Netherrealm. In addition to more powerful netherils, he tasked Dalar to find a way to summon more netherils at a time. Since Dalar reached level 7 of core formation and got proficient in summoning, he was able to summon 50 netherils at body strengthening stage level 9 at a time. If it wasn't for the Dark Lord's order to stop summoning more netherils than they could fit in the combat hall next door, they would have had an army of netherils. Of course, it made sense not to summon more and more netherils because of 2 reasons. 1, they had no place for the undead army. If they let the undeads roam around in Dark Forest, the Guardians would definitely sense the undead presence. 2nd, Dalar could only bound 150 undeads using the Book of Netherils. If he summoned more, they would wreak havoc, probably rip him apart piece by piece. The 2nd reason led to his current experimentation with alpha undeads. The alpha undeads Michael encountered on the Undead Island had a certain level of sentience. They controlled the undeads, just as Dalar, without any Book of Netherils. I hope this one don't end up like the last one, Jonah sighed. The body he was dragging was an alpha. The Dark Lord gave them a potion that paralyzed the undead as well as knocked them out unconscious. Dalar and Jonah killed 3 alpha undeads in their experiment. They still had 2 more alpha undeads, and after that, they would have to ask the Dark Lord to capture more alpha undeads if there were any on the Undead Island. I'm close, I can feel it. I just need to figure out the telepathic signals produced by the brain of an alpha. If I could pinpoint the signals and mimic the signals somehow, I can control the undeads like an alpha, Dalar explained while poking the head of the alpha on the table. The room was dark and gloomy. Only a couple of luminous mushrooms attached to the ceiling were their light source. The faint blue light produced by the mushrooms was barely enough to see where something was at. The alpha undeads were apparently sensitive to bright light, including sunlight. Any kind of bright light would be harmful to the alpha. The light sensitivity was not enough to kill an alpha, but it was enough to disorient them by burning their skin. So where is the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen? I haven't even seen the floating butler. It's Azazel what? Asked Jonah. The floating butler. His name is Azazel Boom. The head situated, getting poked by Dalar, suddenly exploded into bits and pieces. Jonah dashed aside to avoid the brain matter, yet he couldn't avoid them completely. Fuck, Dalar cursed as he punched the table with his big fist. Why the fuck can't I pinpoint the signals? At the moment, Ghost, Gaia, Catherine, and the 5 men were in front of the metal door with intricate symbols. The door stood almost 10 feet tall and 6 feet wide. The sheer size of the vault made Michael and Gaia excited to see the inside. Catherine placed her right hand on the silver door. Catherine Vinslet Breedia. After Catherine spoke, the ground beneath them lightly shivered as they heard a heavy rumbling noise from the other side of the door. Soon, the thousands of weird symbols on the door sparkled. A few seconds later, the door gently opened itself to reveal the treasury. However, when the door opened completely, Michael was disappointed, to say the least, as he saw nothing but a dimly lit hall with several wooden racks. This is underwhelming, Gaia sighed. As a princess, she had some idea where they would have stored all the wealth, but she expected at least a few million worths of gems and gold coins. This is the treasury? Asked Michael, creasing his brows. Of course it is. So according to the agreement and my word, you can pick any two things from here. Catherine seemed to be enjoying their disappointment. They were not idiots to keep all of their wealth in a single place where security was an issue. Like most of the kingdoms in Elon and Azair, they kept their wealth in Grand Spire Bank vaults. Grand Spire Bank was the safest place to keep wealth and precious items. It was like the Gringotts of this world. Instead of goblins, Grand Spire was run by elves and dwarves. A few days ago, when the king returned to the capital, he transferred all the remaining wealth in the treasury to the Grand Spire Bank branch in Bredia with the help of the Adventurer Guild. Only items that were identified by the scholars and deemed as junk remained in the treasury. Michael had already took a huge chunk of Kingdom Bredia from the king, so he did not feel any murderous anger towards the king. After all, in time, everything in this world would belong to him. He stepped into a dimly lit hall with the hopes of at least finding something interesting. System, scan everything in the room and let me know if you find something interesting. That will cost you 5,000 badass points. The system began to scan the entire hall. Gaia wanted to beat the crap out of the princess. Controlling her impulse to do so, she looked through the items in the wooden rack. I pity the people of Bradford. Catherine was unable to keep her mouth shut, recalling what happened at the tournament. Her father had never been ashamed like that ever before in his life. Granted, she knew it was partially her fault for what happened. Still, she hated Ghost, as he almost killed Andrews and took a huge chunk of land from them. Shove that pity up your ass. Gaia mumbled in just enough voice for the princess to hear her, but not too loud. What did you say? I said thank you. The 5 men behind the princess wanted this to be over as soon as possible before the situation escalated into a fight. They could see Catherine clenching her fist, looking at the back of the girl. The girl, on the other hand, was more focused on rummaging through the items on the rack. What is this? Gaia took an old parchment covered in dust. The parchment looked as though no one touched it for at least a couple of decades. She opened up the parchment to see a blueprint for a carriage. Seriously? She placed the spell back on the rack with enough for it to make a thud sound. System has found only one item that could interest the host. What? Only one? Michael asked the system in his mind. Yes. All the other items are mediocre at best, and most of them are just junk. Where is that item you found? The system pointed to the item using the environmental scanning map as Michael made his way toward the item. One of the racks in front of him had countless parchments and other weird-looking objects covered in dust. He shoved all the objects aside to pick up a rusty old metal box. It was small as it fit in his palm. The rust covered the symbols on the surface, preventing anyone from recognizing the symbols. What the hell is this? It was a portal opener. Now it's just a rusty old box. Only the system can make the box work again. For a price. No shit. Catherine noticed the rusty old box in his hand. She used to play with that box when she was little. Her grandfather bought the item in an auction in our continent. He believed it held some heaven-defying secrets, yet after trying to unlock its secret for decades, he realized the box was nothing but just a metal box. Portal opener, huh? So can I open portals anywhere using this? This portal opener can open a portal to only one place. After fixing the place, the host will be unable to change the portal location. A smile emerged on his face. How much for repairing this? 15,000 badass points. He didn't order the system to repair the box at this moment. He turned back to see the princess staring at him. Do you know what this is, Princess Catherine? I'm not your personal scholar, Catherine coldly replied. Gaia clenched her fist as she felt like knocking Catherine's teeth out of her mouth. I'll take this. Only Gaia noticed the glint of excitement in his eyes. Except for Michael, no one had an idea he was holding a power that could change the world forever. What does the host want the box to open a portal? The system sounded rather curious. Netherrealm. Chapter 416. Army of Undead 2-inch Lord Dalar, the Dark Lord, and the Dark Queen are back inside Dalar's workshop. Jonah informed Dalar about the arrival of the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen. The workshop was a mess, because after killing the last alpha undead they had, Dalar went crazy as he started to punch everything he could in the room. Jonah could not stop him as he barely survived the crazy orc. Jonah could still vividly see the orc running around crazy. He kept screaming, "I was so close." Dalar sighed. The orc was looking at the severed head on the table. Among all the things in the room, that head was the only thing that survived Dalar's wrath. Lord Dalar, out of nowhere, Azazel materialized in the room just a couple of inches away from Jonah. Eat! Jonah jumped in shock. He almost had a heart attack. Azazel's mouth opened, but when he saw the mess, he closed his mouth. He looked around for a couple of seconds before speaking again. Lord Dalar, you've been summoned by Lord Lucifer and the Dark Queen. Azazel then turned his gaze towards Jonah, who looked pale as he was terrified of the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen. You're too, Lord Jonah. Azazel flew through the walls as though there were no walls in the room. A few seconds after Azazel left the room, Jonah talked. Lord Dalar, we shouldn't keep them waiting. Let's go. Dalar sighed again. You're right. Both of them walked out of the room. Just before shutting the door closed, Dalar took one last look at the mess. The throne hall of the mansion was not very brightly lit. The chandeliers produced just enough light to make everything visible, and at the same time, it gave a gloomy feeling to the throne hall. After all, he was the Dark Lord, and he shouldn't be sitting in a bright place. Instead of one throne as before, Dalar saw two thrones on the elevated platform, where he saw the Dark Lord and the Dark Queen waiting for them. Azazel remained beside the Dark Lord on the elevated platform. Dalar and Jonah couldn't help thinking Azazel informed the Dark Lord and Dark Queen about the mess. They didn't know about the spy cam in their workshop. Azazel witnessed everything from the surveillance room and just pretended to be seeing the mess for the first time. Dark Lord Lucifer, Dark Queen, Jonah and Dalar knelt on the floor obediently. Rise, Dark Queen's cold voice echoed through the hall. How is your experiment going on, Dalar? His voice sounded calm. If he was mad about the mess they made, he sure didn't show it in his voice. Dark Lord, Dalar stuttered. He tried to tell the Dark Lord about his failure, when Jonah surprisingly intervened. We found out some valuable information about the Alpha Undead. Dark Lord, do tell, Michael asked. He was amused by Jonah's sudden courage. Whenever he came to the mansion, Jonah purposely hid himself, pretending to be cultivating. Since Michael had no use for Jonah other than being an apprentice to Dalar, he didn't talk much with Jonah. Dalar growled after Jonah intervened. The orc hated the human for trying to help him. The last thing Dalar wanted was a human to help him in a situation such as this. It was embarrassing. Teaching him a few things because he was helpful was another thing, but getting saved by him was not cool as far as Dalar was concerned. The Alpha Undeads, they're extremely sensitive to sunlight or any bright light. By focusing a light source on them, the connection they have with the other undeads could be severed and be killed easily. This wasn't a shocking reveal per se, as Michael already knew about the Alpha Undead's vulnerability to sunlight. When he fought them, they always moved under the shade of the trees. The stormy clouds at that time prevented the sunlight from completely falling on the Alphas. Michael was expecting the results of Dalar's other experiment, the experiment of controlling the Alphas. The last time when Michael asked the system about controlling the Alphas, the system informed him that its level was too low. Since he upgraded the system, he decided to try again. Jonah, what you two apparently found is completely useless. Without an army of undead to control, the Alphas are easy prey, especially for the cultivators. They could kill them with a single spell. In other words, these two were killing the Alphas I captured for nothing. Dark Queen's cold words almost made Jonah wet himself. Fortunately, the Dark Lord squeezed her hand to calm her down. I was so close, Dark Lord. I just need a little more time. I was able to feel the connection before the head exploded, Dalar said. He didn't want to hide behind Jonah anymore. If push came to shove, he would have to use the item he got from his father. Nonetheless, he doubted the Dark Lord would kill him just because he failed to achieve a breakthrough in his experiment. Azazel, bring them here. Dalar and Jonah looked at the butler disappear around the corner with confused faces. Several minutes later, Azazel appeared in the hall again. As Azazel approached the Dark Lord and Dark Queen, hovering in the air, There were two figures dragging themselves behind Azazel. The smell of rotten eggs filled the hall. Jonah and Dalar almost got used to the smell as they immediately recognized the two figures behind Azazel. Alphas, Dalar mumbled under his breath. One of the alpha was a ripped man, while the other was a woman with ample breasts. Both of them were naked, of course. Their skin was pale, with several bite marks around their chests. Their shoulder-length hair was greasy and messy. With their dead fish eyes, they stared at Dalar. He was stunned to see the obedience of the alphas. He wondered how the heck the Dark Lord controlled them. Only Michael knew it wasn't controlling, but keeping the alphas in a state of dizziness by injecting a potent potion into their brain. Do what you did in your workshop, Dalar nodded. He had the feeling that the Dark Lord might hold the final key to controlling the alphas. Taking the book Netherils from his space ring, Dalar drew some symbols in the air. Jonah backed away to avoid getting blasted or worse, getting killed. The tattered leather cover of the book lit up as the bright blue symbols began to appear in the air. Soon, the symbols began to rate, creating a sphere of blue light. Speckles of blue light separated themselves from the sphere and floated towards the male alpha. Then, the blue light slowly protruded into its mind. System, are you seeing this? Michael asked the system. His X-ray vision enabled him to see the energy spectrum between Dalar and the alphas. The spectrum of energy was very similar to the energy waves between Michael and his drones. Unlike the energy waves that appear when Michael establishes a connection with a drone, the energy waves between Dalar and the alphas were violent and much more powerful. Yes, the signal waves are too powerful and unstable. It will harm the undead, and in time, it will harm Dalar. Since the host upgraded the system, you can buy a connector to control the alphas. It will cost you only 10,000 badass points. One connector will let you control 2 alphas and Dalar control 4 alphas. So the extra 2, because of the Book of Netherils, Michael pondered. Okay, I will take it. How many? 2. The system asked. No, only 1. It's for Dalar. I don't need to control the alphas, at least not yet. That's why I have Dalar. Warning. Dalar is still not a subordinate. The system strongly advised against giving Dalar the connector. His vision became red as the system warning screen appeared in front of him. He has a spy chem on him, remember? If he tries to mess with me, the spider will inject potent poison into him. Plus, if he wants to escape, he needs to go through the forest filled with deadly fear toxin. What about teleportation? He has a tracker on him which I bought from you. Wouldn't you want to control the alphas? The system continued to ask him questions. It was not completely concerned about Michael's safety. Rather, it wanted to sell 2 connectors. First, I'm going to Mazeroth. Second, the more things I control, the more the strain on my brain. By controlling Dalar, I can control the alphas. By controlling alphas, I will control the undead army. When Michael was trying to control countless spy cam with his mind, the system warned him about the drawbacks of controlling too many things with his brain. Hence, he connected the feeds to the mirrors and gave control of all the spy cams and drones to Azazel, while he only established connections with them when needed. This way, his brain had way less strain. Third, I have 40,000 badass points remaining. I need to have as much points as I can when I go to Mazeroth. The system went silent for a couple of moments. One connector coming up. The connector was a 3-inch long, 2-inch wide paper-thin card with countless micro symbols etched into it. It vaguely resembled the chip in his forearm, which connected the APD with his body. Whenever he needs a potion, he just needs to establish a connection with the APD, and it would inject the potion into his bloodstream. Alternatively, the APD could also automatically inject potions into his body in case he lost consciousness and needed a healing potion, for instance. Stop. When Michael closed the system interface, the time slowing down effect disappeared as he ordered Dalar to stop before he killed the alpha. Dalar quickly stopped the ritual. In a blink of an eye, the Dark Lord appeared in front of him. For a moment, Dalar thought he was going to die. Instead, the Dark Lord just gently slapped the back of his neck. He suddenly felt a bolt of electricity running through his spine. Dalar touched the back of his neck and felt something on his neck. Now performed the ritual. Dalar was confused, but he obeyed the order given to him. As before, The ritual started with a blue sphere, and everything continued perfectly. A few minutes after Jonah stepped aside because Dalar reached the point where the Alpha's head would explode. However, that did not happen. The blue sphere gradually disappeared as the cold, dead eyes of the Alpha shone in red. I can feel the connection, Dalar mumbled. Chapter 417. Army of Undead. Dalar was flabbergasted. His entire body shivered, looking at the Alpha. It was not a connection that enabled Dalar to control the Alpha like a robot. Rather, the connection enabled Dalar to give telepathic orders to the Alpha. With the Alpha's limited intelligence, it would do its absolute best to complete the order. That's how you do it. Michael gave a pat on Dalar's back. He was more excited than Dalar. Come, we have an army to summon, said Michael calmly. Gaia came to stand at his side with the others. A bright light flashed across the hall the next moment, and everyone disappeared from the hall, except Azazel. The sudden flash of light made Jonah tightly shut his eyes. When he opened them again, he was standing in a familiar place. From one gloomy place to another. The empty hall was dimly lit with torches. The walls and the floor was made of marble, which reflected the light produced by the torches and lit the place orange. The crypt was empty since all the pirates were teleported back to Kori's island where they joined Maxina's crew. The crew along with Gibson were working on fixing the old Bertha. After they found out her keel was broken in the middle, they suggested he let the ship go as there was no way to fix the keel. What was the point of having a system if he couldn't find a fix to a simple thing such as fixing the keel? The system sold him something that looked like white clay and instructed him to apply the clay to the heel. Since he had minions to do that, he gave the clay to them. Surprisingly for the crew, when they applied the clay, it mended the broken heel, healing old Bertha. Dalar had no idea about this place. It was spacious enough to fit hundreds of people. Dalar wondered why he brought them to this empty place. You can control for alphas. When you achieve proficiency in controlling them, I will grant you the ability to control more alphas. Granted, controlling more alphas would take a toll on the brain. Hence, Michael gave the task to Dalar on top of Dalar's ability to control more alphas at the same time than him, because of the Book of Netherals. However, the limit was not 4. As a core formation cultivator, Dalar would be able to control at least 10 alphas. According to Jonah's research, one alpha could control 80 undead. Alpha undeads were extremely rare. They were created by the energy signals leaked from the Hydra egg. Since the egg was no longer existing, no alphas would be created on the island. Since Michael reached the Star 4 inverter lever, he could build complicated devices. One of the devices he could build was a signal creator which would replicate the signals. He would have built the device if it wasn't for Vidora being too weak. The device required Vidora to be at least core formation level, so the signals produced by Vidora would be powerful enough to create alpha undeads. Of course, it was not that easy as it had several complications. For the time being, Michael decided to capture the remaining alpha undeads on the island and let Dalar control them. By controlling the alphas, he could control the undeads outside the crypt as well as the undeads of the Netherrealm. 800 undeads. Not enough, Michael thought. Did you buy the thing I asked you? Michael then turned his gaze towards Gaia. Before he set up the portal opener and summoned undeads from the Netherrealm, he needed to find a way to control them to his will after they crossed the portal. Unruly, mindless creatures were no use to him. At the moment, Dalar could summon 50 undeads from the Netherrealm and control 150 undeads at once. Since controlling alphas would take a toll on his brain, he would not be able to control alphas and the undeads at the same time. Hence, Michael came up with a new plan. Gaia flicked her wrist as a bronze collar appeared in her hand. The collar was big enough to put around a human neck and looked plain without any fancy runes or inscriptions. Taking the collar from her hand, he walked several steps away from them. Then, after a flick of his wrist, a large heavy table and a long chair appeared for him to sit and work. He took out a bright orb and placed it on the table for light. While Dalar and Jonah were familiarizing themselves with Dalar's ability to control the alphas, Michael worked in silence. "What's the plan?" she whispered after coming to his side. Why did you want me to buy a slave collar? To control the undeads who are going to walk out of the portal we are about to open. When Michael first told her that the rusty old box could open up a portal to another realm, she couldn't believe it. But she soon came to agree with him, as she had seen him perform so many miracles. The moment he said undead army, she was on board with his plan. There was no loyalty or wage problem with an undead army. Therefore, maintaining an undead army was a breeze if they could control them. How are you going to do that? Explain it to me. She leaned closer to his face, although she had a feeling that whatever he was going to say, she wouldn't understand it completely. I will simplify things for you, said Michael, not wanting to make her feel stupid. That chip I placed in Delar's neck radiates an energy wave that would control the alpha. The slave collar works also has the same underlying principle. It creates an energy wave, and that energy waves control a person's very soul. The slave master establishes a connection with the slave collar, and through that connection, the slave master controls the slave. If the slave shows any disobedience, he or she just has to will the collar to send a bolt of energy wave into the slave's body, which targets the soul. He paused for a moment to breathe and continued. Since the netherils have no soul, I can modify the collar to redirect the energy wave to the undead brain, but a slave master could control 40 slaves at best. How are you planning to control the hundreds of netherils outside, and the ones we are going to summon through the portal? Asked Gaia. Controlling a brain take away less toll on the slave master's mind than controlling the very soul. If my calculations are correct, a core formation cultivator could control 300 undeads after I modified the collars. Gaia raised her brows after doing the math in her brain. Let's say we both control 400 undeads each. That's 800 undeads. What about Delar? He could control 10 alphas, and each of them could control 80 undeads. Then that's another 800. 1,600 undeads. The ones outside had no cultivation power, so still not a powerful army per Gaia was right. If all the 1,600 undeads had body-strengthening level 7 cultivation, they would have been quite a power to reckon with. Since it was not the case, dominating the cultivation continents using this army was nothing but a dream. And working on a way to make the undead outside get cultivation power. As for the undeads in Netherrealm, we need to find suitable candidates to control the undead aside from you, me and Maxine. If we're going to build an army, we need loyal generals. We already have two. Arius brothers. Michael reminded Gaia about Arius brothers who were getting healed rapidly inside the tubes. We will summon the undead from the Netherrealm here. That way they won't be as strong as they are in the Netherrealm. Until we come back from Maze Roth, let Delar summon the undeads and roam around the island. This island suits better to build an undead army. Since they already have undeads, no one would find out about our summonings like hiding a tree in a forest. I like the way your brains work. Gaia would have kissed him so deep if it wasn't for Jonah and Delar in the hall. It's not a perfect plan, but it'll work for now. Hopefully, we will have an army of the undead by the time we return from Maze Roth. As he finished talking, the bronze collar lit up for a few seconds before returning to its normal dull self. Done? Whoa, you're done? Gaia was surprised. He was just placing some weird objects on the collar and connecting them with a thin wire. She couldn't understand what was happening between the objects or how they worked together to modify the slave collar. Can you grab me an undead from outside? Asked Michael, preparing to test the collar. Before I go, I have questions. What? Why can't you use this collar to control the alpha? Michael just smiled behind a mask. It was actually a good question that he himself asked the system for an answer. The energy waves created by the slave collar are too weak. If anyone tried to enslave an alpha, they will be killed in a few seconds. She still had a few questions, but before she could ask them all, she flew high towards a roof to go outside. Michael waited patiently for Gaia to return. He was calm as he knew the collar would work and the undead would be controlled. Orders up, one freshly captured undead. A pale undead landed on Michael's feet. The putrid smell was overwhelming to Jonah and Delar. They momentarily stopped studying the alphas and turned their gazes towards the Dark Lord. Michael placed the collar around the undead before the undead could take a bite at his leg. The moment the bronze collar touched the undead, Michael felt a connection. It was like another arm. He could feel the undead. A tiny crystal stone mine from Stormvale Castle was placed inside the collar. It sent a bolt of energy wave to the undead's brain, making it obedient in a flash. His power made subduing and enslaving the undead easier than he imagined. The undead slowly stood up. This time, it didn't try to leap towards Michael. It growled, but remained obedient. Well, I need to reduce the power of the collar. Chapter 4:18. Portal opened to the Nether Realm. The collar was working perfectly, too perfectly. At the moment, they were like robots waiting for Michael to control them. That meant their each and every moment could be controlled by Michael. It was not efficient when he had thousands of undeads, as he would not be able to control each and every one. He wanted them like mindless war machines. If he instructed them to attack, they should be able to attack their target without him controlling their movements. This way, whoever controls the collar would have less stress on their brain. Grr! The undead growled as Michael approached the undead. Jonah and Delar were staring at the undead without batting an eye. Delar started to sweat inside his long coat. If Lucifer was able to control the undeads without him, his usefulness to Lucifer would diminish greatly. Since the system could not make Delar his subordinate for some reason, Michael always handled Delar with caution. He wanted to replace Delar if Delar tried anything weird. He almost replaced Delar with a portal opener. Before the portal opener, Delar was the only one who could open a portal to summon the Netherils, but this portal was one way. Only Netherils could walk through the portal. No one could enter the Nether Realm. Now Michael could open the portal to the Nether Realm and capture as many Netherils as he wanted. In addition, he could farm experience points inside the Nether Realm as well as gather rare herbs for his herbal garden. "What are you doing?" asked Gaia, looking at him tinkering with the bronze collar around the undead's neck. "Give me a minute." Using runes to control the Netherils would be much easier. Considering he was not a rune master, he had to take the long route by placing several components he bought from the system and the stores in this world into the collar. After tinkering with the collar for a few more minutes, Michael felt the control over the undead had been greatly reduced. But the undead was still in his control. "Attack that wall." His orders sounded weird, but the undead was already running toward the wall he pointed. Reaching the wall, the undead began to attack the wall violently. It punched, scratched, slapped, and even bit the wall. "That's how you make an undead army." Michael cracked his neck. The words that came out of his mouth were drenched in pride. With an undead army, the bloodshed would be greatly reduced. Also, there wouldn't be major loyalty issues. Maintaining an undead army cost fewer resources, and compared to the human army, the undead army was several times deadlier. Unlike an army made of humans, the undead army would fight till the end, as they would not feel any emotions or pain. Jonah, Delar, Michael called the both of them. They left the alpha undeads to come to him. With a flick of his wrist, Michael retrieved the portal opener from his space ring. He threw the portal opener into the middle of the hall and closed his eyes. System, activate the portal. Establishing connection with the portal opener. Please select a target location. Warning, the host will not be able to change the target location afterward. Nether Realm. Locking coordinates. Manipulating the space between the southern continent and the Nether Realm. The portal opener on the ground began to vibrate as the symbols glowed brighter and brighter with the seconds passing by. They could feel the distortion of space around them. Boom! A muffled booming sound echoed through the hall as the portal to the Nether Realm finally opened. Delar was stunned, and so was Jonah and Gaia. On the other side of the portal, they saw a land filled with foreign vegetation. Rainbow-colored trees, gigantic sunflowers, miniature trees, as well as Netherils. The Netherils looked in the direction of the portal as though they had detected the portal open. However, after a few seconds, they went back to roaming around aimlessly. Jonah, Delar, your task is to summon as many Netherils as you can and put this collar around their neck. You will get more collars before tomorrow night. Take this. This will help you knock out the Netherils when they come out of the portal. Michael flicked his wrist as several crates appeared beside the portal. Maxine will bring you all your necessities. Jonah, and Dalar had no choice but to accept. He then retrieved a drone from his space ring before sending it flying into the portal. Azazel, I've sent a drone into the Netherrealm. Monitor the feed carefully and contact me if anything interesting happened. After giving an order to his trusty demon butler, Michael and Gaia activated the runic teleportation to leave the crypt, leaving Jonah and Dalar behind. 2 days later, Michael and Gaia were preparing to attend the party in Hades. Gaia looked stunning in her new clothes. Her glistening white, ornate dress flew from top to bottom and had a square neckline, which gracefully revealed the luxurious dress worn below it. The delectable corset of her dress covered her stomach where the continuous flow was broken up by a simple cloth band worn quite high around her waist. Below the cloth band, the dress opened up to the left and revealed the dress below. The front of the top dress easily reached the ground in the front. The back continued to flow a good length behind her and ended in a broad rectangle. Her sleeves were incredibly long and incredibly wide. Their flow was broken up just above the elbow where they changed color from pearl white to a tinge of silver, and where they were divided by thick, simple bands. These are the same fabric and color used to outline the edges of the dress. When she adjusted her loose hair, Michael was staggered by beauty. He wore a Victorian Gothic-style jacket that reached his knees. The jacket was ornate with silver etchings. His black trousers perfectly complemented his black jacket. Adjusting the edge of his sleeves one last time, he walked towards Gaia. He hugged her from behind and kissed the back of her neck passionately. It tickles Michael, she giggled. You smell good, Michael kissed her cheek. It's the jasmine drops Olivia gave me. Speaking of Olivia, is she still in seclusion? According to Claire, Olivia was trying to break through to the core formation level 9, and she had been in seclusion ever since Gaia left for the Fire Realm. After the championships tournament, Michael presented her with enough pills and potions to successfully reach the core formation level 9. He planned to make her his subordinate when she came out of the seclusion. Knock, knock, knock. Someone gently knocked on the door thrice. Since the two of them finished getting ready, they stepped toward the door. When they opened the door, Claire was standing outside in amazement. Wow, you two are going to steal the show. Claire put her hand around Gaia's hand and led them toward the outside. When they reached outside, almost the entire Sunrise sect was there to cheer for them. Michael felt like he was a celebrity on the red carpet. He waved his hand at the disciples as their thunderous cheers got louder. Ricky was waiting in the carriage. Ladies first. Michael opened the door for Claire and Gaia. He helped both of them get into the carriage by holding their hands as a gentleman should. Did you give the package to him? He asked Ricky. Yes, Master Ghost. He gave you this. Ricky handed over a tiny piece of paper. He opened the paper to see 2 words written inside. Debt settled. He put the paper into a space ring, just in case. In addition to the portal opener, Gaia and Michael took another item from the treasury. It was the item Lord Information asked Michael to get. The item was a bronze plate with several runes on it. Michael scanned the bronze plate. According to the system, it was a piece of an artifact, and without 2 more pieces, the system was unable to tell Michael about the function of the artifact. Although Michael was curious, he handed over the item to Lord Information via Ricky. With this, he had returned the favor to Lord Information for giving the information of who put the bounty on his head before the tournament. Also, Michael asked all his minions to call him Master Ghost instead of Your Majesty outside Bradford. There was no reason for this, except the latter made him feel somewhat older. Since all the pathways were paved, the carriage ride was so smooth. It used to take 2 hours to reach the river town by carriage due to the untended path, but now it would only take them an hour. When are you going to Maze Roth, Ghost? Tomorrow morning, Your finance gonna miss you, Claire playfully nudged Gaia's elbow. I'm going into seclusion, lied Gaia, as Claire was taken aback by surprise. Again? Don't tell me you're about to reach the core strengthening stage, Gaia shook her head. How can I? I'm not a monster like him. I feel like I will reach level 3 if I spend another month or 2 in seclusion. Gaia lied again, because she did not want Claire to get more suspicious than she actually was. At this moment, he did not know he was about to meet his archenemy. To be more specific, Lucifer's archenemy, the future Supreme Guardian Noah. Somewhere else in Azair, someone had already sent assassins to crash Michael's special day. Hi, my wonderful readers, major or minor. Turns of events coming up. New enemies, a new realm, and a new version of Michael. The next tournament arc will be a fun-filled wild ride with lots of actions and background story. So get ready. Also, Hunter Sterling Blade in another universe is about to get his own system. Dictator with a badass system. Fear not, the both systems are not the same. Chapter 419, Engagement Party at Hades. The vibrancy of the river town peaked when they heard Ghost was planning to visit Hades. This was his first visit to the river town as their king. The people had decorated the entire town with lanterns, ornaments, dancing dragons that resembled Nightmare, and signboards. Regardless, it was the morning. The people of the river town fired countless fireworks into the sky. Their clothes were contrary to the colorful decorations. Almost all the people in the river town were dressed in black. They did not know the purpose of his visit. Nonetheless, they were delighted to welcome their king. Hail His Majesty! Hail His Majesty! Hail His Majesty! Hail His Majesty! Hail Sunrise Sect! Hail Sunrise Sect! Hail Sunrise Sect! Hail Sunrise Sect! Long live the king! Long live the king! Long live the king! Long live the king! Their thunderous chants echoed through the river town as the carriage of Ghost entered the town. The carriage slowly moved towards the Hades where the waitresses and waiters were waiting to welcome Michael. Today, Hades was closed. Only the invited guests could enter Hades. The guests had already arrived at Hades, and they were waiting for Ghost to make his appearance. Gloria, the manager of Hades, was waiting outside with a wide grin on her face. No one would tell she was a commoner by looking at her. From her clothes to her attitude, everything changed after joining Hades. Even the waiters and waitresses looked stylish and smart in black coats, white shirts, and bows. Inside the carriage, Michael had a grin on his face. The notification sound of getting badass points sounded louder and louder. He almost earned 20,000 badass points just by reaching the river town. It seems our son has come. Meanwhile, inside the Hades, Ethan put the orange juice in his hand and whispered to Diana. The loud noise outside made it obvious. When Diana saw the invitation from Ghost, she was excited beyond words. She canceled all the events she had to attend and made time to come to the river town. Ethan was equally excited to see his son regardless of what happened in the tournament. Despite everything that happened, everyone got what they wanted. Andrews was about to be engaged to Princess Catherine. Ghost got his own kingdom, and the king got to save his daughter. Excuse me. While Diana was waiting for her son, she heard a sweet childish voice from behind. She turned back to see a cute little girl wearing a glistening blue dress. She carried a green rose in her hand. The little girl's round eyes and her 2 pigtails made her extremely cute. Ethan couldn't resist the girl's cuteness. Unlike Diana, he didn't know the girl. Cindy looked surprised when Diana called her by her name. My lady, you dropped this. Cindy held out the green rose for Diana to take. Ethan couldn't resist the little girl anymore as he ruffled her head. Dien, you know this cutie pie, she nodded. She's the daughter of Lady Raylene, the 5-star chef, and the little sister of Brother Ghost, Sister Elia, and Sister Claire. Cindy puffed out her chest and said, basking everyone around her with her cuteness. Many who noticed Cindy couldn't help sighing. They wanted to squeeze this little girl. Green rose, extremely rare. Another mature voice sounded as Diana looked in the direction of the door to see Peyton approaching them with a calm smile on her face. Guardian Peyton. Regardless of Diana's hate towards the Guardians, she greeted Peyton with a nod and a smile. Ethan also smiled at Peyton, hiding the hatred in his heart. Peyton knelt in front of Cindy and took the green rose from her hand. She adjusted her spectacles. Very rare indeed. Sister, does this belong to you? Cindy asked politely. No, little one, but I will hand this over to the owner. Deal. Cindy looked at Peyton for a few seconds before shaking Peyton's hand with her tiny hand. After Cindy disappeared back into the kitchen to join her mother, Peyton took the seat at Diana's table. Diana did not hate Peyton as she was the best friend of Noah's girlfriend, Zanali. Plus, Diana or Ethan had no reason to hate Peyton except for the fact she's a guardian. They couldn't hate all the guardians because their son was a guardian himself. Peyton took in the atmosphere of Hades for a few seconds in silence. When her colleague said she must visit Hades at least once just for the view, she thought they were overselling it. But after seeing the majestic view of the flowing river outside, the lighting inside the restaurant, and the decor of the place, she was truly amazed. Although Hades was just recently opened, booking a table was a hassle, even for a guardian. The nobles spent thousands of gold coins just to get a table for themselves and taste the cooking of Raylene. Even the people of royal families were in line to get a table. Peyton also noticed all the prominent figures enjoying the drinks. There were elders of the Kane family, representatives of the Rainshade Merchant Guild, as well as the elders of the Sunrise sect. Not all the tables were occupied, as it seemed like Ghost only invited a handful of people to the party. Peyton was curious to see what the reason for his invitation was. The coronation ceremony was meant to be held after 6 months. As Peyton was looking around, everyone's gaze fell on the main door. They saw Ghost and Elia enter Hades. Both of them looked dashing, especially Gaia. Gloria took the wine glass from the table nearby and tapped the glass with a spoon. The atmosphere quickly became silent. Everyone, first of all, thank you for accepting my invitation on such short notice. Please enjoy the meals first. I have an important announcement to make afterward. It will be worth the wait, ladies and gentlemen. Michael did not beat around the bush. The people before him were extremely busy, and there was no need for him to use flowery words. Instead, he knew they would like a more direct approach. Quickly, the waiters and waitresses started their work. They moved around the tables, taking orders like water flowing downstream, flawlessly. Their coordination and speed were truly magnificent and efficient. Somehow, the first faces that drew his attention were Diana and Ethan. On his way to Diana and Ethan, Michael greeted everyone and spent a couple of minutes talking to them as a courtesy. Claire joined the elders at their table, leaving Michael and Gaia to attend to the rest of the guests. When he reached Diana's table, he was greeted by her and her husband with wide grins on their faces. Lady Diana and Lord Ethan. Michael shook Ethan's hand and then Diana's hand. He then greeted Peyton with a smile. Miss Peyton. He shook her hand. Gaia then shook everyone's hand and took her seat beside Ghost. She wondered why out of all seats he decided to sit with the Winstons and a guardian. I hope you don't mind me sitting here, Lord Ethan, Michael said. Their table was meant for a family of 12 to sit, so they had enough seats to go around. Ethan shook his head, chuckling. Hey, it's your party and restaurant. You can sit anywhere you want, Your Majesty. Oh, please call me Ghost. I'm still not a king, and I prefer my friends address me by my name. Lord Ethan, ladies and gentlemen, as they were talking, Gloria herself came to take the order, the specials Gaia ordered for them before they could even open the menu. The specials was a code word for bring everything on the menu for today. Trust me, you have to try them. Gaia winked at them. Something about Elia rubbed Diana in the wrong way. According to Diana's spies, Elia was an orphan who grew up with Ghost. But the aura the girl radiated was not of an orphan. Diana met countless orphans, and Elia was not one of them. Diana noticed the way Elia handled the guests. A commoner girl would have at least felt a little nervous facing powerful people, such as the elders of the Kane family. However, Diana saw no signs of nervousness in her attitude. As Diana was watching Elia, her heart skipped a beat when she noticed the rings on her finger and the ring on Ghost's finger. The last time Diana saw her son, he did not have the ring. She started to connect the dots. He's engaged. Diana came to the conclusion in her mind. A burst of joy exploded in her heart, along with a tinge of sadness. She would have celebrated the day as a festival, but because of the circumstances, she couldn't do so. Still, Diana wanted to leap at them and hug them both so tight. Meanwhile, in the forest surrounding the river town, a group of figures dressed in black clothes was looking at the Hades from the shadows. They covered their bodies from head to toes. They hid in the darkness of the forest. There were at least 50 people in the group, and they all had bows in their hands. Team Hawk is in place. One of the black-clothed figures among the group spoke. He didn't seem to speak to the others, but to a red stone in his hand. Team Eagle is approaching the target site. Let loose on our signal. A thick voice came from the stone as the black-clothed figure nodded. Target in sight. Another black-clothed figure spoke, looking at the Hades. The green roses are in place. Another voice came out of the stone. Wait for the target to reach the marked location. The black-clothed figure who had the red stone in his hand spoke. Inside Hades, everything was going without a mishap. No one had any idea about the lurkers around them. Even Michael did not sense the figures in the forest, as they were far away from the range of environmental scanning. Father, Mother, Michael, and Gaia stood opposite Diana and Ethan. At that moment, Michael heard a voice from behind, a familiar voice. Without even turning back, he could tell who just entered Hades. Noah Winston. Chapter 420, Ninjas crashed the celebration. Noah, who came with Alicia, and Zanali took the seat beside his mother and father. Gaia clenched her fist as the smile on her face disappeared instantly when she saw Zanali. Under the table, Michael squeezed Gaia's hand to calm her down and remind her where they were. Alicia was wearing a sparkling golden gown, while Zanali wore a ruby-red gown with loose full sleeves. Their beauty caught everyone's attention. In the middle of the two beauties, Noah remained calm as serene water. He looked contrary to Michael wearing pure white robes. Diana's heart warmed, seeing her two sons at the same place despite both Noah and Michael not wanting each other's company. Before they were born, Skyall told her that the twins were destined to battle each other for the fate of the world. One would fight for blood and chaos, while the other would fight for peace. Still, Diana invited Noah to the party just to start building the bridge between them and Ghost. Deep down, Noah and Michael didn't hate each other. Unlike Noah, Michael knew about Noah's secret. As far as Michael was concerned, Noah and the rest of the world were being manipulated by a higher power, the Guardians. Have you two met each other before? Ethan asked, looking at them. Gaia's eyes were locked onto Zanali. For Zanali, on the other hand, a commoner girl, no matter who she dates, didn't earn her attention. Hence, Zanali did not even take a second glance at Gaia. Noah and Michael remained silent for a few moments. Diana was afraid that Noah would be mad at Michael for nearly killing Andrews during the tournament. Not like this, Noah calmly answered. Just like Michael, Noah too squeezed Alicia's hand under the table to calm her down. Ghost spared Peter his life, but made his life a living hell by revealing Peter's vigilante life. In addition to that, he literally wiped the floor with Peter. The mental trauma Peter suffered affected Alicia's entire family. The Guardians started investigating Peter, and with the evidence Ghost provided, it was only a matter of time before Peter received a sentence from the guild. Compared to Michael, Noah was a good guy as he did not reveal Gaia's identity, even though Ghost almost destroyed Alicia's family and killed his cousin. You know, unfortunate things happen in life. We should forget, forgive, and move on, Ethan quickly said to ease things up. However, to everyone's surprise, Noah smiled. If you're talking about what happened to Andrews, I don't blame Ghost. Even Michael was surprised to hear Noah. He knew Noah was a guy who could be branded as a righteous goody two-shoes. Still, he didn't expect this answer from Noah. Andrews knew what he was getting into. I am glad everything worked out for everyone. Noah signaled one of the waitresses to fill their cups. The waitress came running to them with an expensive bottle of wine. She filled all their cups except for Michael and Gaia. Everyone at the table looked at the two of them with a bewildered face. We don't drink. Diana nodded approvingly, while Ethan looked just stunned. Me too. Michael nodded at Noah with a smile. Noah really seemed like he didn't hold any grudge against Michael for beating the crap out of Andrews or destroying Peter. Of course, Noah still hated Ghost for using his talents to get richer instead of helping people. In Noah's mind, Ghost was a first-class self-centered person who would lift a finger if there is no profit for him. Diana was glad to hear Noah and felt quite proud of her son. Everything was going better than they expected. The aroma from the kitchen started to kindle their appetite. Noah and Michael could even hear some stomachs growling. They couldn't blame them, as whatever Raylene was making smelled so good. Soon the waitresses and waiters arrived, carrying plates from the kitchen. Gloria and two other waiters came to Michael's table with so many delicious dishes. They neatly lined the dishes on a round table for everyone to easily reach them. Creamy squash risotto with toasted pepitas, chilled marinated pork with Brussels sprouts, clam toast with pancetta, Filipino-style meatloaf, grilled garlic and black pepper shrimp, grilled kingfish with cream corn, olive oil confit chicken with cipollini onions, pork chops with celery and almond salad were just a few dishes Gloria and the two waiters could carry at once. The rest of the dishes were still on the kitchen table, waiting to be picked up. "My lords and my ladies, please enjoy your meals after serving Michael." Gloria tapped the glass in her hands and announced with a gentle smile. Soon after she announced, everyone dug into the dishes in front of them. The hall was filled with the sound of forks and knives hitting the dishes and chewing. The feast continued without any problems. The desserts arrived right after everyone finished their main courses. At Michael's table, everyone was enjoying their meals in silence. Occasionally, Diana tried to start a conversation that would involve both Noah and Ghost. However, when one answered, the other remained silent. So there was no conversation between Noah and Ghost as Diana wanted it to be. The desserts disappeared faster than the main courses. When everyone licked the plates and cups clean, they all looked at Ghost for the reason for his invitation. "The floor is yours, Ghost." Ethan patted Michael on the shoulder as he stood up to talk. "Who else still has some space in the stomach for more desserts?" Michael joked. All the guests let out a chuckle. "I have 2 announcements to make. 2 life-changing announcements." Michael looked at Gaia and smiled before continuing. "Ladies and gentlemen, I was invited to join Maze Roth." The entire hall went silent after he announced. Gaia expected a few more sentences from his mouth, but he suddenly announced the thing without beating around the bush. The people were stunned, especially Diana. She felt a chill running through her spine. Her shock was not the good kind. It was utter fear and dread. Everyone's eyes were one Ghost, so they failed to notice the gloomy look on Diana's face. So just as when Noah was about to turn to look at his mother, all of a sudden, Ghost stopped talking. The very next moment, the smile on Noah and Ghost's faces vanished. The two of them had sensed the danger before anyone else. Chill. 2 arrows pierced through the glass walls out of nowhere. In a blink of an eye, Michael and Noah both reached out to their parents. Noah caught the arrow that was aimed at his mother, and Ghost grabbed the arrow that was aimed at Ethan. Chill. It took a few moments for everyone to realize what just happened. Thanks to Michael and Noah's reflex, they grabbed the arrow mid-air before they could hit Diana and Ethan. "Get down!" Peyton screamed as loud as she could after seeing the arrows. Chill. The glass walls around them shattered before anyone could react to Peyton's shout. Gaia immediately kicked the table before them and used the table as a cover. Sunlight shield, earth protection, metal bubble. Many quickly cast defense spells while the arrows were continuously getting forced at them from all directions. Noah waved his hand as a white translucent bubble covered everyone hiding behind the table. "Mom, Dad, stay here." Noah shouted, "Pulch! Argur! The blood splashed across Michael's table from the waiters who just got riddled by arrows. Lightning dash. He immediately cast the spell to save Gloria before she loses her life. The arrows were extremely fast. Even when he was using lightning dash, the arrows seemed to move relatively faster. He was too late, but not too late. An arrow stuck Gloria in the arm, but he was able to grab her and run into the kitchen area where they had no glass walls. When he entered the kitchen, he saw Raylene and Cindy backed into a corner by several figures in ninja robes. Under different circumstances, Michael would have thought of Earth when he saw the ninjas. "Master Ghost, brother." Raylene was holding Cindy tight. Her face was pale of the terror around her. The kitchen floor was red with blood. All the helpers were slaughtered by the 2 ninjas. On the floor near Cindy, Daniel was holding his stomach as blood was spraying out of the wound. He looked pale with blood loss. Michael's killing intent exploded through the roof when he saw this. The ninjas were only at body strengthening stage level 10. It seemed like Daniel, who was a core formation level 1 cultivator, saved Cindy and Raylene and brought enough time. The ninjas were extremely quick. A few minutes ago, Michael did not sense any danger around him. In a split second, They appeared on his environmental scanning map. They slaughtered the helpers in a few blinks. Ring of Fire Michael only had to think as streams of fire rushed out of his hands as though his hands were flamethrowers. It was not a ring of fire, but a straight line of lava flame aimed at the two ninjas near Raylene and Cindy. Lightning dash. Michael felt losing control to the third persona. It was like something screaming inside his head to let it out. This time, Michael had the upper hand thanks to the meditation and control over his anger. The ninjas were fast, but not as fast as Michael. Before they could leap at him, he reached Raylene and Cindy. Go! Michael shouted as he willed the system to buy a teleportation scroll and teleport the three of them to his room in the Dark Forest mansion. In addition to the teleportation scroll, he also willed the system to knock them out unconscious. The bright light flashed across the kitchen, and in the next second, Cindy, Raylene, and Daniel disappeared from their sight. The kitchen then became darker as he turned back. His eyes flickered in red. The ninjas who were surrounding him had no idea. They just punched the ticket to hell. 15 body strengthening stage, level 10 ninjas were about to face one pissed-off core strengthening stage warrior. Ghost was too mad to think about the reason for the ambush or who sent the ninjas. Chapter 421. Gruesome massacre. Michael could hear the sound of battle outside. But more than the sound of spells, the sound of arrows shattering glass and utensils rolling on the ground could be heard louder. He was surrounded by 15 body strengthening stage level 10 cultivators. At the moment, they all looked like dead bodies to Michael because they would soon be. Chop him to pieces. One of the ninjas ordered the others as they dashed at him. Michael, on the other hand, did not unsheath his words or cast any spells. Instead, he grabbed the kitchen knives from the nearby table where the soup was boiling in the pan. The ninjas zigzagged towards him. Surprisingly, Michael did not hear them casting any spells. Michael couldn't care less how they managed to perform chantless spell casting. Some of the ninjas stayed behind and fired arrows made of black energy. Those ninjas who dashed at him swung their daggers at Michael. The responsive shield spell formed a transparent blue bubble around him. When the arrows hit the bubble, they just disappeared. In a blink of an eye, Michael grabbed the ninjas by their hands before they could cut him. Pulch! 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 He stabbed both the ninjas in their chests violently. The blood kept splashing out of their bodies. Boom! He threw the two ninjas onto the others. The ninjas had lightning-quick reflexes, so they avoided the two dead ninjas. He did not stop at that, as he grabbed a soup bowl and threw the bubbling hot soup on a ninja, dashing towards him. One unfortunate ninja's skin was completely burnt by the soup because the ninja did not have any defense spell cast on him like the rest of them. Ring of Fire. He raised both his hands at the ninja, who was screaming in agony. Out of his hands, a scorching hot stream of fire came out. The fire burned the ninja into a pile of dust within a few seconds. Surprisingly, the ninjas did not back off. Instead, they dashed at him more furiously. Michael showed no mercy to them. He grabbed one ninja by his hand, slamming him onto the table where Raylene used to cut meats. This time the ninjas threw star-shaped shurikens at him. Countless shurikens, glowing in crimson red, flew towards him. Yet all of them burnt to a crisp when they came to contact with the responsive shield. He grabbed the cleaver on the table as the ninja on the table squirmed frantically. 3 ninjas leaped at him to save the ninja on the table. Ignitia, holding the meat cleaver in one hand, sent bolts of lightning at the ninjas approaching him with the other. ZZRRHHHH. ZZRRHHHH. Arg, arg, arg. The lightning bolts hit their target with deadly accuracy. The ninjas dropped dead to the ground, and all of them had a hold right between their eyes. This time, an ear-piercing squeal came out from under the table. It was Gloria who witnessed Michael chopping the ninja on the table to pieces with a meat cleaver. She couldn't hold back her scream. In her life, she had never seen such a gruesome killing. Until now, she was looking at him killing the other ninjas and keeping her mouth shut. But when she saw him chopping the ninja into pieces, she couldn't hold back. The ninjas did not change their target. Even after seeing their friend getting chopped to death, they still rushed toward Michael without a sliver of fear for their lives in their eyes. Outside the kitchen, everyone was still pinned down by the rain of arrows. Somehow the arrows pierced all their defensive spells. Fortunately, the arrows were still weak against physical objects. Those who survived hid under the tables. They could not see where the arrows were coming from. Hence, they couldn't fight back. Boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, the ceiling above them exploded. Several figures jumped through the ceiling after the dust cleared. The crumbled pieces fell down from the ceiling, hit several waiters, and opened up their heads. The figures who jumped through the roof looked different than the ninjas in the kitchen. These figures wore thin plate armor covering their chests, shoulders, and arms. Silver metal covered the rest of their bodies. Gaia looked over the table to see their faces. All of them wrapped white cloth around their head to hide their faces. Gaia counted at least 20 armored figures. She wasn't sure if they were humans or elves or demi-humans behind the cloth. I'm sick of this. Gaia was just about to leave the cover of the table when all the figures raised their hands up. The very next second, a gigantic chakra materialized above them. She expected the chakra to do something other than glowing brighter and brighter and rotate in the air. The chakra faded away into thin air after a few seconds. A faint vibrating sound was still ringing in their head. It took these ambushers only a couple of minutes to turn Hades into a ruin. At the moment, people were hiding under the tables for their lives. Many waiters and waitresses lay on the ground in their own pool of blood. Noah saved as many people as he could. Although Gaia hated Noah, if it wasn't for him, the casualties would have been much higher. I can't feel, suddenly Zanali mumbled. What's happening? Followed by Zanali. Peyton also looked horrified. I can't feel my arch energy. Peyton started to breathe heavily. Not only Peyton and Zanali, but every single one of them, except for Diana, looked terrified. They tried to cast spells, yet no matter how hard they tried, they could even cast a basic spell. However, Gaia could feel arch energy running through her veins just fine. She wanted to use this opportunity to end Zanali's life. It was obvious the chakra made them temporarily unable to use arch energy. Peyton read something about spells that would block arch energy flow in an area, making the place void of arch energy. However, she had never seen the spell before. It felt as though she was teleported to the southern continent, where she would feel the same way as she's feeling at the moment. Pulch. Suddenly, one of the figures standing in the circle dropped to the ground. Everyone looked up and saw a spear made of glowing energy sticking out of the figure's leg. All the figures looked in the direction where the spear came flying to see Noah standing a couple of meters away from them with a sword in each hand. A glowing shield formed around him, which prevented the arrows from piercing through his body. Gaia was not going to let Noah be the savior of them and steal the show. Besides, she knew about Michael's problem. She wanted to rush to the kitchen and help Michael before he lost control again. "Don't move, my lady." Just as she was about to stand up, Gaia heard Azazel's voice in her head. "I have located the archers. If you use your arch energy, the guardians will suspect you and Lord Lucifer. I will deal with the archers from here, since Azazel lacked a physical body and he couldn't leave the dark forest without Michael's help. He was unable to kill the archers hiding in the woods. He located them using drones and spy cams. It was either the ninjas were lucky or the ninjas were too skillful to pick a place in the woods that wasn't covered by any of the spy cams. Azazel could count 50 to 70 archers surrounding the Hades. They were rapidly firing arrow after arrow to pin everyone down. Azazel moved all the spy cams in the nearby area towards the archers. Each spy cam was made with stingers and poison. If Azazel could inject poison into the archers, he could put a stop to the rain of arrows. Fuck it. Gaia was not going to stay still while Michael was losing control of himself. "I can't use arch energy fine. I will still reach him," Gaia mumbled under her breath. "What are you going to do?" Peyton saw Gaia preparing to move out of the table. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. On the other hand, Noah was swinging his sword, cutting the fireballs fired at him by the armored figures. Noah was on the defensive, but he was gradually moving towards them. Ilya, wait. Diana tried to stop Gaia, but it was too late as she leaped out of the cover. Boom, boom, boom. The arrows and fireballs brushed past Gaia. Several fireballs blasted the wall behind her. Arg! One arrow stuck her in the arm when she leaped into the air to reach the kitchen. What the? When she reached the kitchen, she felt a cold chill running through her spine. Her face turned pale. What she saw was a gruesome massacre. Limbs, chunks of meat, severed heads, and burned pieces of cloth were everywhere. The floor was completely drenched in blood. Ghost, she uttered the word. Fear had suppressed her voice. She saw his back as he was holding a ninja by his neck against the wall. As she approached him, she couldn't help feeling dread in her core. The air in the kitchen felt chilly, and the flickering orbs of light gave an eerie feeling to the place. The closer she got to him, the faster her heart started to beat. Ard Creech. The ninja in his hand squirmed, but soon his entire body got ripped in half by Michael. Blood and organs splashed across the floor and walls. Throwing the two halves of the body to the corner where she saw a pile of mutilated bodies, he turned back to look at her. Gaia stepped back in fear. His eyes were blood red. They were glowing as though someone lit a fire inside his eyeballs. I can control him, but not for long, his voice terrified her. It was like his normal voice and Lucifer's voice had a baby together. The glowing red eyes were flickering as he talked. We have to burn this place to the ground. Gaia conjured a ball of fire. They must not let anyone see what has happened here. Hi, my wonderful readers. Yes. I know you don't like Michael losing control over himself. It was part of the story, and stay tuned to see how he is going to handle it. P.S. equals the final battle between Noah and Ghost will happen. No changing that. Chapter 422, Two Gods, Two Ideals Outside the Kitchen. Noah was fighting all the armored figures by himself. Regardless of their number, they couldn't get the upper hand in the fight. Noah's spells were so powerful. However, Noah did not kill any of them. He just incapacitated them, as his mentor taught him. While fighting the armored figures, Noah noticed the interruption in the rain of arrows. Light Blade. Noah cast the spell without chanting. A long sword sparkling materialized in his hand. The armored figure surrounded Noah. Some of them had swords, some had spears, and some cast a spell that turned their fists into fire fists. Diana's heartbeat was getting faster by the second. Looking at Noah facing all the unknown figures by himself made her uneasy. No one could tell which cultivation stage the armored figures or Noah was at. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Noah swung his light blade at the three figures dashing towards him. The figures with fiery fists shot fireballs. Nearly 20 scorching hot fireballs flew towards Noah. The figures were fast, but Noah was faster. He safely evaded their swords and counterattacked. The light sword in Noah's hand clashed with their metal swords, creating sparks of fire. Diana and Ethan looked in the direction of the kitchen. They were nervously expecting Ghost to come out of the kitchen. They did not know what happened inside the kitchen. Puriferous, expinio recta, exterminatus. After Noah knocked out the three armored figures, those who were behind them immediately cast spells. Ethan and Diana were stunned after they heard the spell casting. Ethan looked at Diana with a terrified look on his face. Diana's face was pale with shock and terror. The spells they cast conjured various objects, such as a dragon head made of fiery red energy, rotating chakra, and thorns that came out from the ground beneath Noah. The thorns tried to coil around Noah's legs, but he cut the thorns like butter, using his light sword. A hot stream of scorching hot fire was shot from the dragon's head. It burned the marble ground beneath to ashes as it shot towards Noah. Noah, Ethan, Diana, Zanali, and Alicia all shouted in unison. Arg! Boom! Noah let out a battle cry and swung the light blade at the stream of fire approaching him, splitting the fire in halves. The translucent light bubble around Noah flickered after the chakra hit the bubble. The force of Noah's sword swinging split the ground open. One of the armored figures fell into the crack. When he tried to get out, Noah flicked his wrist, forming a light spear in his hand. He threw the light spear at the figure. The light spear stabbed the figure through the shoulder, pinning him to the ground. Noah started to breathe heavily as he could count 20 people surrounding him. In addition, he sensed more figures flying above the building. Teacher, Noah called his teacher in his mind. They can't keep the void spell for no longer than 10 minutes, Noah. 5 minutes more, and all the cultivators here would get their arch energy back. Andreas' voice reassured Noah. Noah wiped off the blood dripping down the corner of his mouth. Noah closed his eyes as the translucent bubble became brighter once again. Inchrono, Reflectinus, Chlorasi, Scorchorus, some of the figures cast the spells, and at the same time, the rest of them rushed at Noah. They seemed to target only Noah. Boom! All of a sudden, a loud explosion shook the entire building. The ceiling crumbled, raining concrete bits and pieces down. The explosion did not even slow the figures down a bit. Thick gray smoke came out of the kitchen and covered the entrance. Diana and Ethan fixed their eyes on the kitchen door. Through the cloud of smoke, they saw two figures walking out. Ghost Diana couldn't help letting out a heave of sigh in relaxation. Ethan too slightly looked relieved. When Michael came out of the kitchen, he saw nothing but ruins. His favorite restaurant and the first business he owned in this world were in rumbles. The elders and the guests were hiding behind tables while many bodies were laid on the ground under blocks of rocks. The arrows stopped fortunately, which meant Azazel had done his task successfully. Gaia's anger was bubbling inside her, yet she remained calm for Ghost. She squeezed his arm. Since they saw Ghost use his arch energy earlier, they kind of expected him to join forces with Noah and fight the armored figures. However, Michael just completely ignored the battle happening just a few meters away from him and made his way towards where Claire and the elders were. Surprisingly, the armored figures completely ignored Michael and Gaia. "What is he doing?" Ethan asked, bewildered. Michael stepped over an armored figure who was pinned to the ground by Noah. "Ghost, Ilya, get down." Gaia heard a familiar voice coming from behind a round table. However, she sensed grief in the voice of Elder Reiner. Behind a round table, Claire was sobbing. Elder Mark laid on her lap as Elder Reiner and Elder Sandra were holding Elder Mark's hand. An arrow was sticking out of Elder Mark's throat. His eyes were closed and his skin was pale as white paper. Claire looked up at Ghost. Tears were gushing out of her eyes. There were several empty vials near Elder Mark. Everyone looked at him, but there was no expression on his face at all. He stood there like a statue. Inside, Michael was burning with rage. His rage was so overwhelming that he suppressed the third persona completely. He was so pissed at himself. He blamed himself for the ambush. His mind kept reminding him that he should have been more prepared and careful. Go, Gaia said. She wasn't going to hold him back anymore. She doubted she could hold him back anymore. She herself was burning with rage. Granted, Michael and Gaia weren't close with Elder Mark as they were with Elder Reiner. Gaia was close with Elder Sander too, as she worked with Elder Sander managing the funds in the sect in Bradford. Yet when they saw Elder Mark's lifeless body, both of them grieved. The death of Jack flashed across their eyes. First Jack, and now they lost Elder Mark. Michael was standing on one end, Noah was on the other hand, and the armored figures stood in the middle. Several figures surrounded Noah as they focused on Noah. ZZZHHHHHRR. ZZZZHHHHRR. The buzzing sound of electricity reverberated the hall as bolts of lightning coiled around Ghost's hand. The two black swords materialized in his hand, and soon the lightning bolts coiled around the blades as though they were tiny snakes. "Teacher," Noah called out to his teacher in his mind. Noah was stunned to see Ghost using arch energy. I don't know, for the first time, Noah heard his teacher stutter without having an answer. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 10,000 badass points. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 5,000 badass points. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 4,000 badass points. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 6,000 badass points. the sound of notifications kept ringing in his head like crazy. He completely ignored them. When a rapidly increasing amount of badass points could not put a smile on his face, one should know someone was about to get slaughtered mercilessly. Diana's jaw slightly opened as the images of the Dark Lord she saw in the future flashed across her eyes. Those who surrounded Noah dashed at him despite failing again and again to kill him. They seemed to be oblivious to Michael's existence. Michael slowly raised his sword as the golden lightning bolts coiling around the sword became brighter and brighter. In the next second, a thick bolt of lightning shot out of the end of the sword. Boom! The armored figure which got hit by the lightning bolt exploded into a red mist. A core formation level 3 cultivator stood no chance against Michael. The rest of the armored figures finally noticed Michael. They stopped attacking Noah and turned their gazes at Ghost. Noah could have easily overpowered the armored figures if he went for the kill. Instead, Noah focused on incapacitating them. Otherwise, Noah would have ended the battle long ago. Kill them all, Claire shouted. For the first time in her life, she encouraged someone to take lives. No, don't, Peyton and Zanali screamed from the other end. The armored figures momentarily stopped attacking, as though they were interested in the conversation. Something about them rubbed both Noah and Michael in the wrong way. They were acting more and more like puppets who were being controlled by someone or something else. Diddle diddle, the cold words escaped Michael's mouth. You are so... He slowly stepped towards the armored figures without an expression on his face. There were two armored figures in front of him. One was standing with a fiery fist, while the other one was pinned to the ground by Noah's light sword. Ethri Dash, the one who was standing, tried to cast a spell, Pulch. His chanting was abruptly stopped by a sword through his throat. ZZZZHHHHHRR. The electric bolts slid through the sword to the armored figure. The figure's body violently squirmed as smoke began to come out from the inside and out. The lightning bolts turned his body into a pile of half-burned mess within a few minutes. Ignitia. Michael turned his sword to the armored figure who was standing a couple of meters away from him. The lightning bolt shot out from the sword, soared through the sky. Light beam. At the same time, Noah raised his light sword as a beam of light shot out from the end of the light sword. Boom! The light beam hit the lightning bolt before it could reach the target. When they both clashed, a mini explosion knocked everyone around them to the ground. Their eyes were locked on each other. Chapter 423. Infiltrating the Alpha, Guardian Diana clenched her fish, looking at her sons. The two of them looked as though they were about to start a battle. If they battled it out, none of them would survive the backlash because just the clash of their spells knocked all the armored figures out. They were still struggling to stand up. Killing is not justice, Noah said calmly. Late justice is injustice, Michael coldly replied. Noah was planning to capture everyone and interrogate them, while Michael planned to kill everyone except one. Michael would then interrogate the one to get the information he needed. Either of them knew the other one wouldn't back down without a fight. Usually, Michael would have avoided fighting with Noah, especially after knowing Noah's secrets. If he was to battle Noah, he had to use his full power. Revealing his full power would eventually lead them to conclude that Ghost and Lucifer were the same people. However, Michael was confident that Noah couldn't defeat him. He would either win or their battle would be a stalemate. The odds of Noah defeating him were almost zero unless Noah revealed himself as the future Supreme Guardian and the existence of Andreas Soul. He doubted Noah would reveal his secret, so Michael wasn't going to back down. Moreover, he was pissed off. These ambushers did not only destroy Hades, but also killed Eldermark. The Guardians almost had the same justice system as in most of the democratic countries on Earth. They would first file a case, then go to trial, then another trial, and another. The case would go forever. According to the information Michael gathered on the internal workings of the Guardians, it would take at least a few years for Noah to get the one who was responsible for the ambush. The worst thing was the Guardians would keep the armored figures safe and cozy in their prison cells instead of torturing them for information. There was no way in hell Noah would torture them. For Noah, these armored figures were just another problem. With time, even he might forget about them after handing over the case to some Guardian. If these armored figures had some power behind them, they would bribe the guardians and get them out. Michael's route was more direct and efficient, although inhumane. He did not know Noah was planning to reform the Guardian Guild and their justice system from the ground. "I'm going to stop them." Ethan could not see his two sons fight. "Stop!" All of a sudden, a gentle yet mighty voice reverberated in the area. A bright beam of light shot from the sky through the broken ceiling. The beam of light sent a shock wave when it hit the ground, breaking everything around. Several figures stepped out of the bright light beam. Alpha Guardian Peyton was startled to see the sudden appearance of the Alpha Guardian of Hunter Guardians. Michael did not recognize the elf in front of him. Golden, straight hair slightly covers a fine, lived-in face. Expressive amber eyes, set deep within their sockets, watching over the castle bodies and the rubbles calmly. Her skin was smooth as silk and so flawless. The pointy ears looked as though they were a pair of sharp daggers. The set of armor she wore had a squared helm with a face guard shaped in the face of an eagle. Attached to its side were two tall wing-shaped ornaments to mimic the shape of eagle wings. The shiny silver armor was made from many layers of smaller metal pieces, mimicking the scales of a dragon. It covered the entire front and back side, but the attachment straps leave the sides under the arms exposed, which enabled the armor to be more flexible. The edges and the linings in the armor were made of pure gold. On the chest plate, the letter H was surrounded by 4 wolves engraved. The armor made the elf look like she was almost 6 feet 6 inches in height. She looked at Ghost first, and then turned her gaze to Noah. Without uttering a word, she just flicked a wrist as all the armored figures around them got beamed into the sky. Those who stepped out of the light beam with the elf also wore the same armor as the elf lady, but their faces were covered by helmets. "Guardians, sweep the place clean," the Alpha Guardian ordered her men. Everyone else breathed a sigh of relief after the Alpha Guardian's appearance. "Noah, do you need healing?" the Alpha Guardian asked Noah as he shook his head. The light sword in his hand disappeared. "You can all give your statements and leave." The Alpha Guardian did not even look at them. She just waved her hands like she was chasing dogs away. The people in the room were prominent figures. Seeing the way she acted rubbed them in the wrong way. Still, none of them expressed their dissatisfaction. The third persona inside him screamed at him to rip the elf into pieces. It couldn't take the disrespect well. Although Michael was pissed off at the Guardians, he was not stupid to go against a fusion stage level 3 warrior. Controlling the boiling anger within himself, he turned to leave. This was not the right time to go against the Guardians. The Black's swords disappeared into a space, ring along with the golden bolts of lightning. "Not you." When he turned around, he heard the elf's voice. Without even turning back, he could tell the elf was talking to him. Gaia stood up to stand beside him. On the other side, Peyton and Zanali came to join the Alpha Guardian. "This is now a Guardian business. Stay away. Fuck you, bitch." Michael wanted to say these words directly to her face. To be honest, he could feel the third persona inside him wanted to say this. "I don't know who ordered this," Michael said, looking around. "Whoever they are, they should pray for you Guardians to get them first." The threat was obvious. The elf could see the killing intent in his eyes. Michael did not linger around. Elder Reiner stood up carrying Elder Mark's body in his arms. Before Diana could talk to him, she saw Ghost leave the area with the people of his sect. The other elders and the guests left the area too, as quickly as they could. They were afraid of another ambush. The moment they felt the arch energy again, they flew out of Hades, or what was left of it. A few hours later, Michael was in the Dark Forest mansion. He did not attend the funeral of Elder Mark. After paying gold coins for the renovation of Hades, he left the sect. Apparently, the armored figures cast an illusion spell around Hades. The illusion made everything normal to the people outside, so they had no idea that there was a battle happening inside. Ricky told them about that. Dan, on the other hand, was not so lucky. If Michael had just been a couple of minutes late, Daniel would have died. The arrows and the weapons they used prevented the healing potion from healing the wounds. "Did you manage to get any of them?" asked Michael, entering the surveillance room. "They were teleported, my lord." Azazel pointed at a mirror that showed numerous black-robed figures disappear in a blink of an eye. "So the spy cams?" They were destroyed. My lord Azazel shook his head. Teleportation, void, creating spells, grand-scale illusions, weapons that mess with healing potions. Who are these guys? Gaia looked at the mirrors with her hands behind her back. Whoever they are, they just made themselves an enemy of mine, and that's going to end very badly for them, said Michael coldly. Arya will get you more mirrors. I have already built more drones and spy cams for you. I want my eyes in every corner of this continent. That will be done. My lord Azazel bowed. Lucifer, did you notice those freaks mainly targeted Noah? I have a feeling that this ambush wasn't meant for us, but Noah, I don't give a shit who their target was. They messed with me. Before all this shit, I was a hitman. I was the best. When I pick my target, I will always get them, no matter who they are or where they are, by almost killing Cindy and Raylene. Whoever sent the ninjas reached the top of Michael's kill list. How do you plan to get them? By infiltrating the Guardian Guild. Gaia felt a chill. Whoa, infiltrating the Guardians? You're joking? Asked Gaia. Her brows were arched up behind her mask. She was completely stunned. As far as she could remember, he always stayed back from the Guardian Guild, even when they learned that Guardians was hunting him for more than 3,000 years. I have a plan, Michael snickered. He was building this plan for quite some time, and only now he got all the required items to put the plan in motion. For the next few minutes, Michael explained his plan to Gaia and Azazel. When he finished narrating his plan, Gaia was genuinely surprised. Lord, I have only one question, asked Azazel after giving a deep thought to the plan he just heard. Ask. Michael knew what he was going to ask. What if those armored men were teleported to the Guardian Guild headquarters? They will decimate. Michael interrupted Azazel. They are not in the Guardian Guild headquarters. With a wave of his hand, Michael changed the footage of all mirrors. All those mirrors worked as one single display. In the display, they saw an empty hall lit with white orbs. The Hunter Guardians of the Alpha Guardian Michael met earlier stood guarding the hall. Gaia and Azazel were bewildered as they couldn't guess where the footage was coming from. There in the Alpha Guardian's airship, a cold smile emerged on his face. Did you just bug the Alpha Guardian? Asked Gaia. Chapter 424. The dark elf in the tree. Michael was sitting on his throne in the dimly lit throne hall. Gaia paced towards him after finishing her tasks. Claire has informed everyone you're going to Maze Roth, as we told her. Nodded Michael. Instead of sitting on her throne beside Michael, she sat on his lap. She removed the masks on their faces and kissed him. The kiss made both of them feel lightened. With everything that happened, the kiss calmed their nerves. Michael, too, enjoyed the passionate break. He gently caressed her hair while kissing her longer and deeper. When his grab around her waist tightened, she purred, "Are you sure, Michael?" After several minutes of kissing, she departed her lips from his. It's for the best. The longer I stick with the sect, the more they become the target to everyone else. Those who cannot hurt me will harm them, and I want to be able to protect them forever. I can see that, but we put so much effort into the sect, and it's growing up to be a formidable force human. Gaia placed her forehead on his forehead. She was so close to him and wrapped her hands tight around his neck. Snake, I'm just talking about graduating from the sect, not completely abandoning them. We still manage the sect from behind the scenes. He pinched her nose. I know, human. I just wanted to hear you say that. I'm not going to stop until our sect becomes the most powerful one in this fucking world. In the future, every sector should be in our control. He could see the resolve in her eyes. It felt great to have her around. With a woman like her by his side, he could indeed take the entire world head on. As they were talking, Azazel appeared in the hall out of thin air. Oh, forgive me, my lord, my lady. I will come back later, Azazel quickly said. Don't be a baby sea bass. Gaia chuckled, looking at the mighty demon who tried to be courteous. What is it, Azazel? Asked Michael before the demon started to blush or something. I talked to Lady Arya, my lord. I informed her brothers should stay in the manor until you return. She asked for your permission to leave Jysel and stay with her brothers. Why not? Michael wasn't going to prevent Arya from spending time with her brothers. The longer she spent time with her brothers, the more she would feel grateful to him. Thus, her loyalty to him would increase. He planned to make the two brothers his generals. Soon his undead army would grow in numbers, and at that time, he would need loyal generals to command the army. Since Arya's brothers were soldiers, with enough training, they could become great generals. However, war and commanding an army was not Michael's area of expertise. Luckily, he had the Princess of Nagaland with him. Though Gaia had no prior experience commanding an army, there was no doubt in his mind. She would make a damn good queen and a superior commander. Another loose end tied. What else should we do before departing? Asked Gaia. Nightmare is saying his goodbyes. Vidora has entered into seclusion. Maxine will be busy mining the crystals in Stormvale Mountain. Tiberius is building his own kingdom. Michael had given orders to each of his subordinates while he was away. Caius and Heinberg are working with the Maven senators to merge the two kingdoms. The civil war in Maven is still young, so it will take some time, said Michael as though he had nothing to do with the civil war in Maven. He was the one who orchestrated the entire thing, so he could merge Giselle with Maven with the support of the people of both kingdoms. Through Corey, he supplied weapons and resources to the freedom fighters in Maven who were fighting against Senator Vibius. They believed that Senator Vibius was raising taxes, driving the economy to drain, and militarizing the kingdom. They had no idea that Senator Vibius was long dead. Michael's plan was to merge all the Senate-ruled kingdoms into one single kingdom. For now, the merger of Giselle and Maven was enough. No matter what, he needed to protect the Stormvale Mountain and the existence of the Arch-energy crystals from the Guardians. What about Sadie? Asked Gaia. Her task is to simply get stronger. I provided her with enough pills and potions to reach core formation level 7 within 4 months. The sooner she gets stronger, the better. We need to take over the Silver Moon as soon as possible. I'm getting sick of this, Guardians. Michael felt the same way. It was like no matter how strong he got, the Guardians seemed stronger. However, when he thought about the third persona, surprisingly he smiled. Did you forget, darling? I'm the fucking Dark Lord, somewhere else. A man wearing long purple robes and half-moon spectacles was walking towards a giant banyan tree. A white dragon the size of a 3-month-old puppy was standing on his shoulder and calmly looking around the surroundings. The figure was none other than Wulfric. As far as one could see, there was nothing but the banyan tree and Wulfric in the place. One could wonder how such a giant tree grew on a land paved with marble stones. Several cone-shaped mountains were floating in the sky as though they were balloons. Wulfric calmly walked towards the tree. As he approached the tree moved, not the entire tree, but the bark of the tree. Destiny is a mysterious thing. Another calm voice sounded from within the tree. Soon, a figure emerged from inside the tree. A humanoid figure and the face of a man could be seen in the tree. Dread it. Run from it. Destiny arrives all the same. The words were spoken in a gruff voice. How are you, old friend? Wulfric asked the figure stuck to the tree. Same old Wulfric, asking the questions you already know the answer to. The figure seemed to be chuckling, but the mouth did not move much. Eladir Wulfric uttered the name. It's been ages since I heard that name, said Eladir. He sounded exhausted. It was not a surprise, as he was being tortured by the Sky Hall for the last 3,000 years. Eladir was one of the founding fathers of the infamous Order of Death. He started a cult to suppress the Sky Hall. With geniuses and prodigies from every corner of the world, he and the fellow founding fathers managed to create a power that rivaled the Sky Hall itself in a mere 1,000 years. But like many powers who challenged the Sky Hall, they were obliterated. When did we last meet? 1,000 years ago, or 21 years ago. Eladir amused. Same old Eladir. Asking the questions you already know the answer to, Wulfric began to walk around the tree with a calm smile on his face. Since Eladir was stuck to the tree and couldn't move his neck, he waited until Wulfric came before him. What's troubling you, my friend? What you did 21 years ago? You said it yourself, Eldady. Dread it. Run from it. Destiny arrives all the same. You cannot escape destiny, Wulfric sighed. You also cannot imprison the destiny, Wulfric. This time, Eladir's lips curved upwards, letting out an amused smile. No prison in the universe could hold him back. He is here, isn't he? Wulfric smiled. There was no fear in his eyes, just exhaustion. He's coming here, Eladir. I invited him. Eladir was surprised, and yet, ever since he knew Wulfric, it had always been impossible to know the reasons for his actions. He goes by the name Ghost, and he has already started to grasp the power of darkness. One could not see any expression on Ellider's almost wooden-like face. But inside, Ellider was excited. 3,000 years of torture grew into a giant tree of anger towards Eskai Hall in his heart. He was waiting for the day of the Dark Lord's arrival. Ellider wanted nothing but to see him burn the Eskai Hall to the ground and everyone who helped Sky Hall decimate the Order of Death, as well as his friends. But still, Ellider had one question after hearing Wulfric, and if you know this, why don't you go kill him? The dragon looked at Wulfric. She also had the same question as the Dark Elf. Meddling with gods will only lead to catastrophe, my friend. I learned that the hard way. If the world's destiny is to get destroyed by the Dark Lord and reborn as a new world, no mortal can stop that from happening. Elder remained silent for a few moments before asking, "Still, why did you invite him?" "Let me guess, you're not going to tell me." Once again, Wulfric smiled gently. "Goodbye, old friend," as he said. Wulfric placed his hand on Ellider's head as numerous symbols appeared on the tree. The faint sound of vibrations reverberated the area. Soon, Ellider's eyes began to glow too. H. Ellider screamed as the dragon watched the Dark Elf with a bewildered face. Soon, the Dark Elf's scream abruptly stopped. "Master, what was that?" "I erased his memories of me." Wulfric almost sounded sad. He patted Ellider on the shoulder, which was covered by bark and a green moth. He then looked around, enjoying the serenity of the Ukulon realm one last time. Soon, everything is going to change. Wulfric closed his eyes, stroking his long white beard. A gentle breeze arrived at the same time, gathering all the green leaves shed by the banyan tree. The trees brushed past him, and when the breeze settled down, Wulfric and the dragon were nowhere to be found. They disappeared into the thin air. Chapter 425. The Grand Spire Bank in Flame Fair, one of the dukedoms of Kingdom Kethin, was an imposing milky white building built with marble stones. The building was located near the avenue that led to Flame Fair, Duke Avon's villa. From the street, a set of paved stairs led up to a set of burnished golden doors. The doors were flanked by an elf in a uniform of scarlet and gold. This was the entrance to the Grand Spire Bank Flame Fair branch. Before leaving for Ukulon Realm, he had to deposit a percentage of his wealth. By doing so, he would get a pay cube, which was similar to a credit card on Earth. Since he agreed to become the leader of the Thasian Alchemy Guild, Calvin insisted he open an account in Grand Spire Bank so they could transfer his monthly payment without any delay. "Nice." Michael nodded in approval, looking at the bank before him. This building could not scream wealthy any louder. The stairs led into a small entrance hall and another set of doors. The door frame and the handles were made of pure gold. He chose not to stare at the elves at the door because he did not want to be seen as a noob who had never seen an elf in his life before. Through these doors, also flanked with elves, was a vast marble hall with long counters stretching along its length with doors leading off to the vault passageways with around 100 elves and dwarves sitting at them. The vaults extended for miles under the city and were accessible through rough stone, complex and interconnected passageways by means of magic pushcarts that were operated by dwarves. Rumor had that a dragon lurked in the depths of each branch as additional security devices. Lord Ghost, just after passing through the door, he was called by a youngster wearing sky blue robes. He was fanning himself with a matching blue fan, and when he saw Ghost, he grinned ear to ear, which seemed pretty forced. "You must be the one Calvin sent." Michael shook the youngster's hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Lord Ghost. I am Leon Lee. Lead the way," Lee said Michael as the youngster walked towards an elf sitting on the far end counter in the hall. He heard about elves being innately beautiful, but when he saw the girl before him, he realized beautiful was an understatement. Her skin was sparkling smooth. The golden hair looked as though each strand of hair was made of gold. "Mr. Lee, Lord Ghost, please be seated," the elf said with a heartwarming smile. "You know me?" asked Ghost in doubt. The elf nodded. "It's our task to learn about potential clients, Lord Ghost." "Cool. Now, Lord Ghost, Mr. Lee, how can I be of assistance?" Michael looked at the name board on the table before her. The name Vanya Valric was written on the board in beautiful calligraphy. "Miss Valric, You said it's your task to learn about your potential clients. So I assume you know about my two businesses. The elf nodded once again as Michael continued. Until now, I'm dealing without pay cubes, but it's not. How do you say professional and convenient? Michael was just saying this for the sake of conversation. The bank took pride in keeping the contents stored in their vaults safe and secure. However, security was not a concern to Michael as he stored his gold coins in system storage, which was the most secure place he could think of. The reason Michael decided to open an account was because of Calvin and for the ease of transferring coins. To this day, when he purchases something for 100,000 gold coins, for example, he had to give 100,000 gold coins physically. That meant stacks made of gold coins so high would appear, and the seller or the owner had to count the coins. This process was tedious. If he had pay cubes, on the other hand, he could just transfer the gold coins in his Grand Spire bank account to another account easily in a few seconds. To be honest, Lord Ghost, I don't know how you managed until now without a pay cube. It's a must for a business with a caliber like yours. You have made the right choice by coming here. I would suggest you open a VIP account rather than a normal account. Lord Ghost, the elf suggested. Let me explain the key benefits, Lord Ghost. Transferring funds in your account from one continent to another will be done within a day. If you wish to transfer items such as artifacts, paintings, etc., we will handle the security so you can be at ease. Another benefit that you would be interested in more is our tax reduction. What is that? Asked Michael. Currently, if your monthly income is more than 10 million, you'll have to pay tax to each kingdom your revenue flows through. 40% of your income will go to paying taxes. But if you're a VIP account holder in our bank, your income will be directed to your Grand Spire account and your taxes will be reduced to 30%. You will save 10%, and Lord Ghost, that's not a small percentage. The last part got him. He hated paying taxes and filling the bellies of nobles in each kingdom. If Gaia was here, she would have jumped the gun and said okay right away after hearing the elf. His current monthly income was somewhere between 14 million, including his 2 million monthly paycheck from the Cian Alchemy Guild. Miss Valric, I heard how secure your bank is, but you want to see how secure? The elf cut Michael's sentence. It'll be better if I show you, instead of explaining, Lord Ghost. Shall we? The elf stood up, gesturing at Michael and Lee to follow her. Great! Michael was kind of excited. As the elf turned around to lead them to the vaults, he took out a spider from his system storage and willed it to be on his chest, sending feeds to Azazel. At the end of the brightly lit hall was a golden door. The two elves flanking the door opened it to let Valric, Michael, and Lee through. In contrast to the grand marble of the entryway in the main hall, on the other side of the door, the passageways to the vaults were stone and dimly lit with flaming torches. After following Valric for a few minutes, they came to a slop where Michael saw coiling train tracks. Levitas, a golden cart materialized on the tracks after she uttered the word. The trio climbed onto the cart one by one, and when they were settled, Valric just flicked her wrist, and the cart began to run automatically. Whoa! Lee seemed a little queasy when the cart began to accelerate significantly. The cart was taking them deep beneath the surface through the maze of twisting passages. Michael tried to get a look at their surroundings, but in addition to the cart's speed, the vast, complex, interconnected series of tracks prevented him from doing so. After almost 15 minutes of cart riding, the cart came to a halt in front of a giant door made of dark metal. The door stood at least 30 meters in height and 20 meters wide. This is the first security measure, Lord Ghost. This door is built to withstand any magical spells cast no matter who cast the spell. Valric sounded proud. She then placed her hand on the door and said, Obenta. The ground vibrated as the door slowly creaked open. While it was opening, Michael asked, what if someone else said the same word? Will the door still open? Valric smiled, almost seeming amused by the question. The door has runes on it, which analyze the voices of Grand Spire workers in real time, Lord Ghost. Plus, the passcode changes every minute, which only the authorized personnel know. Michael took a mental note. Miss Valric, how does this door open, runes? Lee asked. No runes, Master Lee. Raw physical strength. What do you mean by that? Lee couldn't help questioning. Giants, Master Lee. Only the strongest giants can open this door from inside. As for the location of the giants and the door mechanism, it is kept as a top secret. When the door completely creaked open, they were welcomed by an endless, dimly lit hall with thousands of mini vortexes. These deep-sea blue vortexes were hovering in the air, and the sheer number of them startled Michael. This is the second security measure, Lord Ghost. When you open your account, a mini pocket dimension and the entryway to that dimension will be created here. Each portal is assigned a number. Only the handler of that account number could enter the portal. Every portal you see here is protected by several powerful runes and arrays. If anyone tried, not that they could come this far, they will be burnt to a crisp. What if this handler tried to get his hands on the items? Asked Michael. The handler could access the dimension, but he or she won't know the coordinates of the place where the bank keeps your items. Every dimension is near inhabitable Lord Ghost. No one can survive there for more than an hour. So if you don't know where to look for the items, odds are you're dead. After knowing the coordinates by contacting us and passing the verification tests, the handler will be given the coordinates. The vault at the coordinates is impenetrable even by an immortal. When the client requested an item to be taken out of the vault, the bank will hand over the handler a special rune. After reaching the coordinates, the vault will ask for the passcode, which will be given to the handler from our security branch after another series of verification processes. By the minute, she was impressing Michael. Somehow these verifications sounded like intriguing death traps. On top of everything, Michael felt like he's been watched by several entities. The handler then places the rune on the vault. The rune will teleport the item directly to a secure place. The rune will change every 3 hours, so duplicating is not an option. After that, the bank will give the coordinates of the place to the client. The client has the option to pick up the item or to be delivered to the preferred location. We will take the required items from the client when opening a new account. The elf explained everything patiently. Of course, this is just the gist of it. Some parts of the security are only shared with those with high clearance levels. You can rest assured, Lord Ghost, there are no other secure places like Grand Spire in this world. Michael was truly surprised. He could not think of a single weak point in the security system, and what she told him until now seemed like only half of the security. It was evident that behind the scenes, there were more security measures in place. Therefore, robbing this place was nothing but suicide. Michael hoped he won't have to steal from Grand Spire in the future. At this time, he did not know fate had another thing in store for him. Chapter 426. Arriving at Mazaroth the next day, the sun slowly rose from the horizon, spreading its golden rays to the land. The warmth of the sun woke up the early birds along with the disciples of the Sunrise sect. The sect was completely revitalized by new buildings and majestic flower plantations. The fountains built occasionally on the neatly paved road added an extra bit of charm to the sect's beauty. Only one construction place could be seen, and it was on the place where Ghost's previous house was located. On Gaia's rampage, she destroyed the home. Ever since then, the dwarven engineer who built the Hades was tasked to build Michael's new home. Michael bought a blueprint from the system store and made some changes to accommodate his taste and the size of the land given to him, and handed the construction work to the dwarf. The total cost to build his new home was a whopping 18 million gold coins. The blueprint Michael bought was the blueprint of Updown Court in England. The changes were made to make the house smaller, since Michael had no need for so many rooms and bathrooms. After discussing with the dwarf, the house ended up with 20 rooms, 10 bathrooms, and 5 swimming pools, including 1 private swimming pool for Gaia and Michael. Even this felt like too much to him, but Gaia insisted and refused to go lower than 20 rooms. Currently, only Gaia was standing in front of the half-built home, waiting for Michael. Sorry, it took longer than I expected. Michael appeared out of thin air thanks to runic teleportation. Everything all right? Gaia asked, hugging him tight. They both continued to kiss each other before departing. Went great, actually. I opened up a VIP account, and Calvin's guy made a deposit of 6 million into the account as my bonus. I guess thousands of gold to spend. We should milk as much as we can before we destroy them, Gaia grinned. What about you? Did you tell the Kane family elders we might not be able to make it to the wedding? Asked Michael. He sat on the stack of marble stones and helped Gaia up. He then put his hand around Gaia's shoulder They're pretty pissed off about the ambush. I heard that's the hottest topic in Elon right now. And oh, the wedding has been postponed. Michael was surprised. The Kane family went to such lengths to make sure Adam weds the Oswin family heiress. It was highly unlikely they postponed because a trio of elders got ambushed. They didn't tell me why. They just told me the wedding has been postponed. Did you happen to meet Lord Ashton? Nope. Gaia shook her head. Your full name is Gaia Ashton, and he's also called Ashton. You two related? It's coincidence, brat. She gnawed Michael's hand playfully. Ouch, you animal. Michael knocked her on the head. He suddenly stopped chuckling, which made Gaia frown. She looked at his face to see a worried look on his face. Don't worry, Michael. We will find a cure for your problem. I have a feeling the dark elf my mother talked about has all the answers we need. I am afraid he will have more than answers, said Michael. His gut feeling told him something was going to happen soon. Ignoring the gloomy feelings, Michael accessed the system storage to take out a brown, sparkling potion. He drank the potion quickly and closed his eyes. The potion was so bitter that it made bitter melon look sweet. After he drank the potion, Gaia noticed tiny hairs coming out of his cheeks. She saw his beard grow at a visible speed. In a few blinks of an eye, his stubble beard turned bushy. His hair also grew a couple of inches, but not as much as the beard. System, upgrade her mask to the max level. He then willed the system, placing his hand on Gaia's face. She began to feel a warm wave spreading through her head. The chameleon mask has been upgraded. Anyone under the half-immortal stage will not see through the effects of the mask. The system charged 10,000 badass points for the upgrade. This was the last thing Michael planned to do before leaving for the Ukulon realm. What did you do? Asked Gaia, touching her face. I made sure you stay safe. Just run if you see anyone above half-immortal stage. Human, I don't think those guys will be teaching there. Better safe than sorry. Shall we go? Michael jumped down from the stacks of marble stones. Go? Aren't you going to tell everyone? She frowned as Michael sighed. I already told Claire. I'm not very good at goodbyes. Besides, they are still grieving. We should leave them be, whoosh. As Michael was speaking, a shadow was cast on them. They both looked up at the sky to see Nightmare slowly descending from the sky. He landed comfortably on Michael's shoulder. You're on time. Michael brushed Nightmare's neck gently. Before we go, I have a question. You're going to study. What is she going to do? You faked the acceptance letter, but what if they have records of new admissions? If they compare the list of names with the people who arrived, she will stand out. Gaia looked at Michael, expecting him to explain. Believe it or not, Michael had the same question. However, according to the system, it altered the records somehow. At first, Michael couldn't believe the system. He never thought the system would be able to alter records of Mazeroth from another realm. Yet the system did that, and reassured him that he has nothing to worry. He trusted the system enough to bring her to the Ukulon realm. Where does this come from? Nightmare nudged his head on Michael's beard. Let's go, shall we? Rather than explaining and wasting time, Michael retrieved the golden parchment from the system storage. Gaia also took out similar-looking parchment from her space ring. Both parchments looked exactly the same. No one could find any difference in the scroll, except for their names. Taking out a quill from their space rings, they signed their names on the corner of the parchments as instructed. After signing, nothing happened. They just kept staring at each other. For a couple of minutes, an awkward silence filled the area. What dash? And just as Gaia was about to say something, the air around them became hotter. They felt the space around them getting distorted. In the next second, a blue vortex appeared behind them, and in a blink of an eye, the vortex sucked them in. They traveled through space for more than 3 days, but for them, it felt like a couple of seconds. When they opened their eyes, they were standing on endless grassland. Wow, Nightmare's jaw dropped a couple of inches down in shock. Not only he but Gaia and Michael were also mesmerized by the beauty around them. The puffy, milky white clouds seemed so close to them. Around them, there were hundreds of giant mountains in the shape of cones floating in the air. Hundreds of people flying on what seemed like swords and spears, and even broomsticks. Whoosh! As they were basking in the beauty of the Ukulon realm, the space around them was distorted once again. Before even Michael could turn his head, Gaia was sucked into a vortex. Michael's heart skipped a beat as he reached for the vortex to pull her out. However, it was too late. She and the vortex both disappeared. System, locate her. Where is she? He shouted at the system in his mind. Do not be alarmed, host. Gaia is still in the Aculon realm. The system has teleported her to another more suitable location. What do you mean more suitable? You will see. The system kicked him out in spite of his urge to ask more questions. The Aculon realm's sky was filled with floating mountains. Each mountain looked unique. One had water flowing from the top, one was covered in vegetation, and one seemed to be covered in snow. Under different circumstances, Michael would have taken some time to enjoy the beauty in peace and calm. Now, he wanted to find Gaia first. Human, all of a sudden, he heard Gaia's voice in his head through the earpiece. Fuck, did you teleport me here? She sounded slightly annoyed because of the sudden teleportation. Trust me, I had no control. Where are you now? I think I'm on a floating mountain. So I guess I'm still in Aculon realm, Michael sighed. Let's find where are we exactly, and rendezvous somewhere, got it? Welcome to Maze Roth, a gruff voice sounded from behind. Michael quickly turned around and saw a giant of a man walking toward him. The man was about twice as tall as an average man, standing at 10 feet tall and 3 times as wide, with a long mane of shaggy black hair and a beard that covered most of his face. He kind of reminded Michael of Hagrid in Harry Potter. The entire world seemed to be the world of wizardry in a weird way. Except this man did not speak with an accent. You must be the youngster who goes by the name Ghost. And who is this majestic creature? Grrr, when the man tried to pet Nightmare. The dragon showed his razor-sharp teeth. Fierce one, huh? I admire creatures with some spirit like this. You little dragon need all the spirit you can get to face those jerks called royal dragons for a moment. Michael remained silent. He was scanning the man from top to bottom. Surprisingly, the man was only at the body-strengthening stage. Where are my manners? Gilrine, the groundskeeper of Maze Roth. Chapter 427, Flying Train to Maze Roth. Follow me. Your ship departs in 40 minutes. Gilrine gestured at Michael to follow him. Reassured that Gaia is still in the Aculon realm, Michael walked behind Gilrine, looking around. The place was simply magical. The rainbows added another layer of charm to the already magnificent Aculon realm. Michael did not know where Gilrine was leading him to. As far as he could see, there was nothing but grassland and floating mountains. Few of the mountains had small pagodas atop. However, those pagodas did not look like the famous Maze Roth. How may I call you? Asked Michael. Gilrine, groundskeeper. Fatso, as many like to call me, Gilrine chuckled. Gilrine, it is how many students are in my batch? Michael tried to gather information about the Aculon realm and Immerse, starting from Gilrine, since Gilrine seemed like a talkative type. 24. The number is twice in the junior batch. Trust me, this time we have some monsters. When they leave after 3 years of study in Maze Roth, they will rule the world. 3 years. I thought the studies in Maze Roth will be 18 months, asked Michael. Gilrine scratched his bushy beard as a few peanuts jumped out his beard. That's for the senior batch, which is you kids. The little ones will study here for 3 years. Nightmare couldn't take his eyes off the sky where he saw countless people flying. He wanted to check out the new place by flying around. He really missed Fedora. They would have really loved the place, Nightmare thought. After almost half an hour of walking, they came to the edge of the mountain. Michael stood on the edge, looking down. There was nothing but puffy clouds down. They covered the air as though they were fluffy white blankets. You're the last one in your batch, and surprisingly, you took your time. Normally, kids come running here the second after they get the invitation. Michael could barely see the expression on his face through the bushy beard. I had some loose ends to tie up for some reason. Gilrine had a weird feeling looking at the calm face of the youngster. He couldn't explain the feeling, but it was drilling his heart like a drill. Choo! Choo! The sound of the train in the distance drew their attention towards the sky. Michael was pretty surprised to see a train approaching them. The train was flying rather than running on a track. The train was at least 650 m in length. It was painted in black with the word Maze Roth Express written on the side in crimson red. Michael counted 5 coaches while waiting for the train. He couldn't help remembering the Hogwarts Express looking at the train. This whole place and M. Azeroth reminded him of Harry Potter. Instead of Harry Potter, he felt like Voldemort since the Guardians named him the Dark Lord as the train approached them. It slowed down and eventually stopped in the air above them. A bridge made of light appeared from the center car to the edge of the mountain Michael and Gilrine were standing on. Bollocks, all of a sudden, Gilrine slapped his own forehead. I forgot to pick something important. He turned to look at Michael. Do you mind going alone? I will meet you at the gateway. Michael did not know how this entire process works, yet looking at the man's pleading face, he nodded. Sure thing, great. Hey, erase your ticket. Gilrine handed over Michael a golden card the size of a credit card and flicked his wrist. A large broomstick materialized on the ground beneath his feet. In a blink of an eye, Gilrine stepped on the broomstick and disappeared into the sky in a rush. The ticket had the number 34 under the name Maze Roth written in emerald green ink. The sparkling blue light bridge seemed intimidating as Michael never walked on a light bridge before. Still, he wasn't afraid. Even if he fell, he could fly, so there was no need to be afraid. To his surprise, when he stepped on the light bridge, a loud thunder shaking even the mountains sounded throughout the realm. That's ominous. Michael looked up at the sky. The puffy white clouds were being chased by dark, gloomy clouds. The colorful realm slowly turned darker and darker. In the distance, several lightning cracks were splitting the sky. The darkness soothed. He walked the bridge with his head held high. When he finally stepped into the train, the light bridge faded away. He was welcomed by a corridor large enough for two grown men to walk side by side. There were several compartments in front of him, and each of them had a number on the door. Not a single compartment had open doors. The door near him had the number 23, and the numbers increased further. He walked through the corridor. 25, 28, Nightmare counted along the way. The train was spotless. The blue rug they were walking on was clean, and the place smelled like jasmine. He could not look into the compartments as the doors were made of some kind of redwood. The coordinator was brightly lit by golden orbs on the ceiling. Finally, several minutes later, he found the number 34. There is no knob on the door, said Nightmare. Michael looked at the ticket in his hand, wondering how to open the door when the door next to his compartment opened. Alluring beauty with silky brown hair stepped out of the room. She wore a warm smile on her face. You have to place your ticket on the door, the girl spoke in a melodious voice. She turned her gaze towards Nightmare while Michael was placing the golden ticket on the door. Her warm smile and beauty mesmerized Nightmare. He was just staring at the girl's face without batting an eye. Several runes began to glow when the ticket touched the door. A golden knob appeared as Michael twisted the knob to open the door. The compartment was a small room with a single door opening to the long corridor. There appeared to be seating for up to 6 adults or 8 children in the compartment, on 2 cushioned benches facing each other. Thank you, don't mention it. Number 34, she smiled, making Michael frown. You seem like you don't know it. In Maze Roth, no student is allowed to use their names, just only by the numbers given to us when they sort us into specialization houses. I am 33 until I get my student number. I'm your neighbor. The girl reached out her hand to shake his hands with a bright smile. She seemed warm and friendly, and deep down, she reminded someone of him. For the sake of manners, Michael shook her hand. She did not linger around to have a conversation as she returned to her compartment. He entered his compartment and sat next to the window. The windows were getting covered by tiny droplets of water formed by the drizzling rain. As though the train was waiting for him to settle in his compartment, the train began to move only after he reached his place. Where is she? Nightmare asked again. He jumped onto Michael's lap and looked at him with a worried face. She's fine, he said before calling the system in his mind. System, scan this compartment. I want to know if there's something that could spy on us. That will be 100 badass points. As usual, he had to pay the system to get to do something. Surprisingly, the system informed him there is nothing in the compartment that could spy on them. Where are you? It took several seconds to get a reply from Gaia. Human, you're not going to believe this, Gaia sounded excited. I will tell you everything when you come here, Michael frowned. Are you in Maze Roth? Yeah. Holy shit, Michael. You have to see this place. This is fucking awesome. He was stunned because Gaia was extremely hard to please, yet even he praised the place, and seemed shocked by Mazaroth's beauty. "I have a surprise for you, Mikey. Come sooner. It'll be waiting for you." "Shit, I gotta go." The connection broke off abruptly. Although he did not know what was the reason for her excitement, he was relieved to hear she made it into Maze Roth without a problem. Inside the compartment next to Michael's compartment, two girls were drinking hot tea facing each other. "Edith, who are you talking to?" asked Victoria, the girl who betrayed Abras and sent a dagger through his heart. Michael was oblivious to the point that he was sitting next to the Princess of Thusia, and the girl who he just talked to was the younger sister of Layla Alden. Number 34, Edith chuckled, winking at Victoria. He was pretty okay in the eyes. Good height, awesome body. Regardless of his robes, I was still able to see his muscles flexing out. Plus, he has a dragon for a familiar. Let me guess, a forest dragon. Victoria did not even look at Edith. She was still looking outside through the window and calmly taking sips from her cup. "How did you know?" Edith was shocked, because if he had a royal dragon, I would have known him and you would have known him, Victoria calmly said. Anyone could see the superiority in her voice. "So what?" "I'm telling you, you should find a boyfriend, and this is the only place you might find the one who fits your criteria. You always ask me to find a boyfriend. What about you? Have you confessed your feelings to your sweetheart?" Edith's face immediately turned red. "Or you're going to tell me that you and Noah are just friends?" Victoria was smiling. As far as she was concerned, nothing could worry her, and she and her family were reaching for heaven with the help of Cosmic Stream. Only if she knew the deadliest man in the world was sitting next to her with a vengeance against her and her kingdom. Chapter 428, Runemaster. I should check out what's happening. After traveling for an hour, he eventually decided to send spiders throughout the train. "Open the door," Michael said to Nightmare, who was watching the outside with his nose pressed against the window. Nightmare flew towards the doorknob and opened the door by twisting the knob using both of his hands. Michael sent several spiders through the door. Nightmare kept watching the spiders crawling out the door and activating their camouflage to blend in with the environment. The corridor was pretty much empty except for a few youngsters who put their heads out the door to look at the corridor as though they were expecting someone. Michael was watching everything with his eyes closed. The feeds were running in his mind. Although it was stressful to watch them in his mind, he was not in the situation to set up mirrors or contact Azazel. Speaking of Azazel, Michael tried to establish a connection with his demon butler, but he was unable to connect with him. It didn't come as a surprise to Michael, as his earpieces lacked the power to enable him to communicate between realms. The spiders he sent towards the front of the train returned nothing. However, the ones that went on the other side showed him something interesting. It was a sight of several youngsters who were tall, lean, and mean-looking ganging up on a youngster. The guy who was getting the beating curled in the shape of a question mark to cover his chest, gut, and face. The elves wore robes so fine and silky. They looked like they were weaved using golden threads. They neatly combed their golden hair and wore a silver circlet with a red ruby in the center. Their pointy ears and flawless smooth skin were a dead giveaway of their identity as elves to Michael. He could not identify the youngster's race as he was covering his face. Michael moved around the spiders to get a better angle. "Filthy half-blood. Thank Eladriel, we could only give you a beating. Let's just cut his ears. I feel disgusting just by kicking this filthy half-blood." The elven youngsters were shouting while beating the one who they called half-blood. Michael began to realize what was happening, and his suspicion was confirmed when he saw the ears of the youngster who was getting beaten up. Those ears were not as pointy as the ears of the elves. Still, they were not the ears of humans. Half-elf, Michael thought. He heard Claire's grandfather Christopher talk about the proud nature of elves. Because Claire's mother, who was an elf, eloped with a human, the House of Ellikin sent a mage to capture Alasha, Claire's mother, and put a powerful cure on Christopher and Claire's father. Claire was a half-elf too, but she seemed completely human, unlike the youngster. Although Claire was an exceptional beauty, it was still far too for someone to say she has elven blood running in her body. "I'm tired, I need some blood wine, and I need to change my shoes because of this filth." The youngsters began to kick the half-elf harder and harder, but soon they left him alone. Michael saw the half-elf lying on the ground still. He almost thought the half-elf lost consciousness because of the beating the elves gave him. The half-elf surprised him by standing up. Now that the half-elf was on his feet, Michael could see his face. The half-elf had a pair of blue eyes, golden shoulder-length hair, warm ivory skin tone, as well as a pair of arched eyebrows on his long face. Unlike the elves, the half-elf was wearing a cream-colored jacket, black pants that had several stitches, and worn-out brown boots. The half-elf bent backward, holding his waist. "Oh, my back," the half-elf grimaced. He then wiped off the blood coming out from his nostrils, and surprisingly, he grinned ear to ear. The reason for his happiness was revealed to Michael when the half-elf opened his fist. Michael saw several silver rings. "Great harvest. I hope these assholes have something valuable inside," the half-elf mumbled under his breath. Still, Michael was able to hear him. The half-elf gawked back and forth before rushing towards the back of the train. Interesting. Michael moved the spiders behind the half-elf to follow him. The half-elf passed every compartment until the last one. Yet, he never opened the last compartment. He walked past the compartments and stepped into the last couch, which was one open compartment. Several suitcases were lying around, and some of them were opened. Clothes and books were lying around chaotically. The half-elf jumped onto a stack of suitcases. The half-elf looked around, closed his eyes, and placed one space ring on his right palm. Michael was staring at the half-elf curiously. The half-elf remained with his eyes closed for a couple of minutes. When the half-elf opened his eyes, his index finger was glowing. He touched the space ring with his index finger as the space ring began to tremble. The half-elf moved his finger, drawing some kind of symbol on his palm. Boom! The trembling space ring all of a sudden exploded. Yet, there were few items materialized on the floor just after the space ring exploded. Michael saw a couple of J-daggers, scrolls, and a few gold coins. The half-elf frowned. "Damn it," he cursed, waving his hand. A beam of light shot out from the half-elf's palm and engulfed the items. The very next second, the light beam disappeared along with the items on the floor. The half-elf continued to break the space rings one by one. Each time he broke a space ring, he ended up stealing the leftover items. A rune master. Michael realized the specialization of the half-elf while watching him break open the space rings one by one. Obviously, the half-elf was destroying the space rings along with most of the items inside. Still, it was a great feat that many believe that space rings are unbreakable. If he was called by Maze Roth, he must be a gifted one, Michael thought. For a long time, he was looking for a rune master to serve him. It seemed like he had finally found a suitable candidate to recruit. The problem was, however, how he should approach the half-elf. He could either meet the half-elf as Ghost or Lucifer, but getting into his Lucifer persona in the Ukulon realm was a risk. Therefore, he decided to approach him as Ghost. Fortunately, the girl he met told him that in the Ukulon realm, Maze Roth in particular, everyone would be called using their student numbers rather than real names. If he played his cards correctly, he could hide his identity and recruit him into the order. Several minutes later, the half-elf broke all the space rings in his hand. He jumped down to the floor with a grin. It's time to find another group of racist assholes to steal from. The half-elf made his way towards the student compartments once again. The half-elf walked out of the compartment having no idea of being followed. Inside compartment 33, Edith and Victoria were staring at an orb floating in the middle of them. "Why does your father want you to hide your identity?" Edith asked. The orb was powered with cosmoncy energy. Hence, they were able to communicate with Victoria's father in Thusia using the orb. "I don't know, but Dad must have his reasons in her life." Victoria had never questioned her father's decisions. For her, he was the greatest ruler born to unite the entire world under the name of Thusia. She believed it was her destiny to rule the united world as the Empress of Thusia. "At least I don't have to wear any mask to hide my face," Edith rolled her eyes. She did not seem very happy about Victoria hiding her face as well as her identity as the Princess of Thusia. "So be glad," Victoria said, flicking her wrist. A porcelain mask appeared on her face. She slowly placed the mask on her face. Victoria kept the mask on her face, and gradually, the mask merged with her face, changing her facial feathers and the color of her hair. In mere moments, Victoria's face transformed completely. She looked nothing like the Victoria Edith knew and saw a few seconds ago. "This is going to be weird," Edith said. She couldn't help reaching out to feel Victoria's face. Her face was still soft and very human-like. "Now, can you keep your mouth shut, Eddie?" Edith knocked Victoria on the head playfully. "I'm not a secret spiller. You can hide your face, but you cannot hide who you are. Eventually, you yourself will reveal your identity, and they'll have to save you." But as usual, Edith said, puffing her chest out, "Tell me the one time you saved me," asked Victoria. Edith stuck her tongue out, since not even once she saved Victoria from trouble. On the contrary, it was always Victoria who saved Edith from trouble. She was friends with Victoria as far as she could remember. Simply, they were family to each other. They did not keep secrets from each other except for Victoria's involvement in acquiring the cosmic stream. However, that was because Victoria's father made Victoria promise not to tell anyone until they obtained the cosmic stream. Edith would have stopped Victoria and persuaded her to find another way instead of betraying someone using love. For Edith, love was the most precious thing in the world. Because Victoria was her best friend, subconsciously Edith ignored the fact Victoria faked being in love with Abraz and betrayed him for the cosmic stream. Fusions did get the cosmic stream, and they were using the stream to become the strongest. However, they failed to realize that the power came at a cost. Chapter 429. Castle of Mazeroth. Castle of Mazeroth. While Michael was coming to Mazeroth on the train, Gaia had already reached the outskirts of Mazeroth. Mazeroth Castle was a large, 9-story high building supported by celestial magic with 252 staircases throughout its many towers and turrets and very deep dungeons. The castle was built 4,000 years ago by a 6-star architect and the foremost celebrated cultivators of the age: Archer Crook, Ingrid Stenham, Chio Jean, and Karjan Pavlovich. All of them were 6-star warrior, alchemist, rune master, and blacksmith respectively. The castle was the main building of the Mazeroth, regarded as the finest academy for studying wizardry in the world. Mazeroth was built on the Mother Mountain in Ukulon Realm. The Mother Mountain was said to be one giant mountain before something destroyed the mountain into pieces. The floating mountains were once pieces of the Mother Mountain. Mazeroth was surrounded by a fairly large lake to the south of the main building. The huge main oak front doors that led into the entrance hall faced west and opened up to sloping lawns. Endless forest extended around to the west of the castle. There were also exterior greenhouses and herb patches on the school grounds for the alchemy students. Due to its ancient age and the sheer amount of celestial energy present in or around it, the castle had developed a form of sentience, though none could confirm this. Gaia just came out of the forest to the west. She was stunned by the sheer magnificence of the castle. She always praised the castle of Nagaland and took pride in the castle her ancestors built. However, the castle of Mazeroth made the castle of Nagaland look like a poor shack. Miss, suddenly Gaia heard a voice from behind. In a split second, a long sword appeared in her hand. She turned around at lightning speed. God. The one who shouted, seeing her sword against his throat, was a giant of a man. His face was almost covered by a tangled mane of a beard. "Miss, my name is Gilrine, the groundskeeper of Mazeroth," said Gilrine without moving an inch. The pointy edge of the sword was just an inch away from his throat, and the girl looked as though she would send the sword through his throat if he dared to move. Prove it. Gaia was the intruder, yet she intimidated Gilrine without showing any hesitation. She trained herself to proficiently lie before meeting Ghost, but after meeting him, he honed her skill of lying further. One of the lessons she learned from Ghost was that the best way to lie was to believe the lie. Slowly, Gaia threatened when Gilrine tried to move his hand. "My card is in my pocket." Gilrine slowly moved his hand inside his coat pocket. Gaia heard several sounds. She even heard a bird squeak. Gilrine let out an awkward smile, trying to find his identification card given to him by the headmistress. It took him almost 5 minutes to find the card. Gaia noticed Gilrine taking out a silver card with his picture on it. The words "Groundskeeper of Mazeroth" was etched onto the card in gold. Excellent, she thought to herself. Miss, can you please? Gilrine gently touched the sword, pleading for her to take the sword away from his throat. Gaia looked at Gilrine from top to bottom before finally moving the silver sword away from his throat. She put the sword into the sheath hanging on her waist. Gilrine sighed. Miss, how did you get here? You should be with your batchmates on the train, frowned Gilrine. Batchmates? Who do you think I am? I am the new combat professor, Nayla Steinmeier, she exclaimed, flicking her wrist as a silver card similar to Gilrine's identification card appeared in her hand. She threw the card at Gilrine. Gilrine was taken aback by surprise. At most, she would be 30, and 30 was way too young to be a professor. Still, the identification card showed him that she was indeed Nayla Steinmeier, the new combat professor. If Headmaster recruited her to teach the art of combat to the students, Gilrine had no doubts that she was the best because Mazeroth accepted only the best of the bests. Professor Steinmeier, you were hunting out in the woods? Asked Gilrine. The thought of Gaia killing another imposter and taking her identification card and pretending to be Nayla Steinmeier never came across Gilrine's mind. After being teleported by the system, she woke up in the forest. While she was searching for a way to get back to Michael, she ended up in the middle of a battle between two girls. They were equally matched, and when Gaia saw them, both of the girls were badly injured by each other. She did not interfere. However, she wanted to contact Michael and ask him what to do when both the girls used the most powerful spell in their arsenal. Unfortunately, the two girls died on the spot. As usual, Gaia tried to loot their bodies. The spells destroyed their bodies along with all their belongings except for the identification card and the long sword in her sheath. The moment she picked up the card, she experienced acute pain in her face. Surprisingly, the mask Michael gave her transformed her face to look like the face on the identification card. Are you going to stand there or show me around the castle? Yes. This way, Professor Steinmeier. We still have some time before the students arrive. Gilrine walked in front of her, taking the lead. While showing around the castle grounds, Gilrine went on and on about the history of Mazeroth. Gaia paid no heed to the history lesson. Show me the tree, huh? Gilrine was confused by her sudden question. They were at the training grounds, which was a flat, shortcut grassy area, and were located near the greenhouses. There was no tree in the vicinity, so he scratched his bushy beard with a confused look on his face. Can you be more specific, Professor Steinmeier? Never mind. I will practice my punches later, Gaia lied. She wanted to find the tree her mother talked about, the tree with the dark elf. She probed Gilrine because he seemed to know a lot about the castle grounds and the Ukulun realm. Since there was nothing but a confused look on his face, she learned that the location of the tree was well hidden. Gilrine, they were on their way to the courtyard when Gaia met a tall, severe-looking lady in her late 60s. Her dark hair was tied up in a bun and wore round spectacles. Gaia's heart skipped a beat as the woman was a level 10 fusion stage cultivator. Headmistress Martin, Gilrine bowed his head with the utmost respect. The lady nodded in return before turning her gaze towards Gaia. Oh, Headmistress Martin, this is Professor Nayla Steinmeier, our new combat professor. How stupid of me. You must have known this, Gilrine let out an embarrassed chuckle. New professor? Wulfric did not say anything about getting a new combat professor. I checked her identification card, Headmistress, Gilrine said before Gaia could open her mouth. It must have slipped his mind. Fortunately for Gaia, Headmistress Kayla was on an urgent business, and she trusted Gilrine and the security measure of Mazeroth. Hence, she did not think Gaia was an imposter. In a blink of an eye, Kayla turned herself into a milky white eagle and flew into the dark sky. Gaia was stunned yet again. She is the best shapeshifter there is, Gilrine proudly said. Gaia could also notice a tear rolling out of his eyes in pride. Through the oak door in the courtyard, they stepped into the castle. The corridors were as wide as a spacious hall. It was brightly lit with huge chandeliers and giant candles. Where is everyone? Gaia couldn't help asking Gilrine, looking at the empty corridors and halls. This entire time, she saw no one except Gilrine and Headmistress Martin. Once again, she looked around standing in front of the giant oak door. Instead of answering, Gilrine just grinned. Then he pushed open the oak door. The moment the door was opened, the silence she experienced disappeared. The buzzing sound and the chitter-chatter of people reverberated in the area. "Welcome to Maze Off, Professor," Gil Rhines said proudly. The bustling large hall before her was the main hall of Maze Off. It had enough space to hold every student, as well as the main staff and guests. The hall had tall walls that reached up to the ceiling, which was covered with floating candles and enchanted to look like a starry sky. At the front of the hall was the staff table, which was designed to house the entire Maze Roth staff. In the center of the table was a throne chair where the headmaster sat. In front of the staff table were 5 6-foot pillars. The pillar in the center was made of glass, unlike the rest of them, which were made of granite stone. The hall was lit by thousands and thousands of candles that were floating in midair over 4 long tables, where the rest of the students were sitting. These tables were laid with glittering golden plates and goblets. Gaia looked upward and saw a velvety black ceiling dotted with stars. It was nothing like the starry sky she had seen. It was more beautiful, more mesmerizing. She really had a hard time believing there was a ceiling there at all, and that the hall didn't simply open onto heaven. The students were busy gossiping and playing as they did not notice Gaia. Chapter 430, Sorting Ceremony L. Finally, the train came to a halt. One by one, the compartment doors opened. Michael waited for everyone to leave before he left the train last. When he came to the door, the scenery before him took his breath away. "Wow!" Nightmare exclaimed. Unlike Michael, who meditated on his way, Nightmare was looking at everything through the window. Still, when he saw the place with nothing in front of his eyes, the place looked 100 times more stunning or more. For Michael, the Maze Roth castle immediately reminded him of Hogwarts. Of course, the castle was unique in its own way. Now that he stepped outside the train, he was able to see more and more students who seemed to be of the same age as him. He could see almost every fantasy race, such as elves, dwarves, humans, orcs, and beastmen. The elves were standing in a group away from the other races, while the dwarves seemed to be cursing at the elves for some reason. The tension between the two races was visible. Almost every single one of them was familiar with them. The elves mostly carried a beautiful snowy owl in a cage. Contrary to the elves, the dwarves were standing beside various breeds of dogs. Michael smiled inside, seeing dog breeds such as Husky, German Shepherd, and Bulldogs in this world. Some of the dogs, however, had wings and pointy ears. Taking his eyes off the dwarves, he noticed the growling faces of orcs and the beastmen. Orcs were the bodybuilders of this world. Their bulky muscle-mountain physique itself terrified many humans. Despite their terrifying look, the orcs were a peace-loving race. Only a few tribes such as Dalar's tribe advocated war and violence. According to Gaia, the orcs preferred to live in peace and prosper through trade routes with nearby kingdoms. The orcs were the only powerful race in the world who did not have their own kingdom. Almost all the orcs had a raccoon with a long bushy tail sitting on their shoulders. Among the humans, he was standing last beside the half-elf. Each and every man and girl in the crowd carried an exotic rare familiar. The dragons were said to be a rare race, yet he could see a bunch of dragons flying around like flies. Some of the dragons radiated a noble aura. Their demeanor, the way they looked at the others, the shininess of their scales. Simply, those dragons stood out. Edith and Victoria were standing in the front. Since Michael had no idea who they were, he paid little attention to them. His full focus was on the half-elf and the majestic castle in front of him. "Why are we standing here? Where's that giant?" The elves began to show their discontent with waiting. Only the elves were daring enough to be like this. The rest of them were glad to be a part of Maze Roth, unlike the elves. The more he saw the elves, the more he realized the assholeness of the elves. On top of being racist, they seemed to be lacking patience. Michael looked around his surroundings. They seemed to be in the training grounds because the grass field was neatly pruned and he could notice pitches resembling cricket pitches. The cultivation level of each individual surprised Michael. None of them was stronger than him. Only one girl seemed to be on the same stage as him. With the experience points he received from the Reapers Gaia killed and the ninjas he killed back in Hades, he was able to reach core strengthening stage level 4. He was the strongest among them, and the girl piqued his curiosity. However, curiosity wasn't enough for him to go to the front and talk to the girl. He had more pressing issues to take care of. In this world full of surprises, it was logical for someone else to be stronger than him at this point in his life. It would take him decades to be the strongest of them all. Silence. An authoritative voice sounded from above them. All the students looked upward and saw a group of 4 descending. The leading figure was a young man wearing square glasses. Behind him were 2 girls and a youngster who showed his chiseled body and magazine-worthy abs. The gray-haired young man, wearing glasses, was in silver armor that fit perfectly on his body. He carried a heavy sword on his back. Just like Michael, this youngster too had a short haircut. The blonde-haired girl behind the young man looked cold, stern, and unsympathetic. The other girl, whose black hair flayed in the wind, had a warm smile on her face. She seemed more friendly and very approachable than the other girl. Currently, the 4 of them slowly descended onto the ground. Unfortunately for Michael, all of them were core formation level 10 cultivators. While he was in the Ukulon realm, he did not want to stand out. The attraction would hurt his search for the dark elf in the tree. He simply preferred anonymity in Ukulon realm. He never expected that he would be the strongest among them. He could, however, hide his cultivation level with the help of the system, but that would definitely raise red flags if someone tried to perceive his cultivation level, especially the professors. The other option was to lower his cultivation, except if they used powerful arrays. His real cultivation would be exposed and result in unnecessary complications. Therefore, Michael mingled with the crowd, staying at last. Since the half-elf was a thief, he too naturally stayed behind. Nightmare wrapped his tail around Michael's neck as he stared at the other dragons in wonder. He had never met his species, and he was curious about the other dragons. "Welcome to Mazeroth. I am Elliot Watson, the head prefect," the youngster carrying the heavy sword proudly said. He adjusted his glass before continuing. "Shall we?" Elliot looked over his shoulder at the tall, bulky youngster behind him. The students, including Michael, did not know what the 4 of them were planning to do. Soon, he found out when a hot air brushed past them. The heavy sword, which was in the sheath a second ago, was now in his hand. Even Michael failed to notice as the youngster moved too quickly, faster than blinking an eye. As expected, Elliot nodded. He then turned his gaze back at the new students. "Listen to your prefects, and don't taint the proud name of Mazeroth. If you do, I will take care of the matter myself." Then the 4 of them took off, leaving the students confused. Only a few students could guess why they came. The hot air brushed past them with celestial energy. Elliot checked if there was an imposter amidst them. Although the odds of forging the teleportation scroll to Mazeroth were near 0, and no one had managed to do so, it was customary for the head prefect and the student leaders of each specialization to conduct a search when the new students arrived. Michael felt a major déjà vu looking at the disappearing figures of the 4 students. It felt like yesterday he saw Alex, Adam, Selena, and Sadie at the Heaven's Gate competition. As he was looking at them, he felt the half-elf moving his hand through his coat. The half-elf was daring to pickpocket Michael. He could tell the half-elf was highly trained by the way he was moving his hands. Too bad the half-elf was trying to pickpocket the Earth's #1 hitman and the deadliest man. "Your trick won't work on me, half-elf," Michael whispered to the half-elf. The half-elf's face instantly became paler. "You need fingers to break open those space rings you stole. Don't make me break them," he whispered to the half-elf with a smile on his face. To others, they were like friends having a nice chat. The half-elf shivered after he heard Michael. He had no idea how the human next to him found out about his trick of breaking the space rings. It took him years to come up with a rune hack to break open the space rings. There is that giant. Someone should teach him the concept of time. When everyone saw Gilrine walking out through the door in the courtyard, the elves began to bitch. "Welcome, welcome to Mazeroth. Someone already said that. Now lead us to the sorting pillars without wasting our time anymore." One of the elves rolled his eyes. His arrogant demeanor drew everyone's attention, including Michael's. He was one of the elves who beat the half-elf earlier on the train. Gilrine's grin shrunk. "Sorry. Now, if you follow me," Gilrine said, clearing his throat to disguise the embarrassed look on his face. Despite his look, Gilrine seemed to be a soft-hearted man. The elves followed Gilrine, first as the others followed them behind. The half-elf tried to speed up his steps. Try to escape, and it'll tell the elves what you did to their stuff. His words stopped the half-elf in his way. I don't know what you were talking about, said the half-elf. Nightmare. Michael gently nudged Nightmare's chin as he leaped onto the half-elf's shoulder. The half-elf almost shouted and swatted away Nightmare, but Nightmare's razor-sharp teeth stopped him from doing so. Walk with me, said Michael, following the crowd. The half-elf realized he had no choice but to follow him because the man walking in front of him was the strongest of them all. He made an amateur mistake by not checking his cultivation before trying to pickpocket him. However, he did not have to worry for long, as the professors would strip away their cultivation after the sorting ceremonies. The students would only be allowed to use their cultivation during certain tasks and assignments. Hey, little dragon, the half-elf smiled at Nightmare. You're either extremely lucky or unlucky. The half-elf couldn't guess whether to laugh or cry hearing the dragon. What's your name, by the way? Asked Nightmare. Wilkes the half-elf sighed, giving the dragon one of his aliases. Chapter 431. Sorting Ceremony. LL Michael followed Gilrine while keeping an eye on the half-elf. The walls above the corridors were filled with dancing plants and talking portraits. The closer he got to the oak door at the end of the corridor, the louder the students began to chit-chat. They were clearly more excited than Michael. Under different circumstances, Michael would have enjoyed spending his time on Maze Roth. The third persona problem of his prevented him from appreciating the life around him. What's behind this door is the Heaven Kids. Gilrine grinned ear to ear before opening the oak door. And, just as Michael expected, the hall reminded him of Hogwarts' Great Hall. Each specialization class was called a house. The house tables were as follows from left to right: warriors, rune masters, blacksmiths, and alchemists. Each long table was designed to resemble their houses. The table of warriors looked like a long sword. The rune master's table was etched with countless glowing runes, and the blacksmith table was made of metal rather than wood like the rest of the tables. Finally, the alchemy table had veins coiling around, and little sprouts were sticking out from within the table. The 5 pillars drew Michael's attention. They were situated just before the staff table. Each pillar contained a glowing rune except for the pillar in the middle. The 2 pillars left to the center pillar had a crimson red sword and navy blue chakra on top of them. The pillars on the right had a silver anvil and an emerald green tree etched onto them. Only the girl sitting at the far end of the staff table was young, and the rest of the staff were mature and older. Everything seemed in order, the little children who were in the first years murmuring excitedly and enjoying the magical atmosphere. The staff wore warm smiles on their faces, and the throne in the middle of the staff table remained empty. Only one professor, who was in complete black robes, was yelling at a student with a bloody face. The professor kept slapping the boy despite the wounds on his face. Eventually, the professor noticed the new students and let go of the student with a final slap to the back of his head. Students, please be silent. One of the professors, who wore a pointy hat on her hat, clapped her hands. Her clapping was as loud as thunder. The great hall immediately became silent. Gilrine walked towards the staff table to take his seat beside the youngest professor at the table. Headmistress Kayla stood up to welcome the new students. I am Headmistress Kayla Martin, and before we begin the feast, we will conduct the sorting ceremony. Please step forward and place a drop of your blood on the center pillar. The first years were curiously looking at them to see who was going to end up in their house. They were even betting on them, as though Michael and the others were racehorses. You will receive your student ID after you're sorted into one of the 4 proud houses: warriors, rune masters, blacksmiths, and alchemists. It's forbidden to use your real identity while you're studying in Maze Roth. Your student number will be your identity for the next 18 months, Professor Kayla explained. Michael sighed and relaxed inside. With this rule, he could hide his real identity rather easily. Also, if someone messed with him, he would be able to beat the crap out of them without worrying about the consequences for once. Now step forward one by one. She returned to her seat as the sorting ceremony finally began. The first one to step forward was the elf who bitched about Gilrine being late. With his chest puffed out and head held high, he made his way towards the center pillar. Rather than using a dagger to cut his palm to shed blood, he cut his palm using just his delicately pruned and manicured nails. He touched the pillar with his bloody hand. The blood was instantly absorbed by the pillar, and the glowing runes on the pillars lost their glimmer. The next moment, the center pillar began to vibrate. The pillar with crimson red sword rune glowed brighter as the first-year students sitting on the warrior house table cheered thunderously. The elf grinned arrogantly. Soon, a cloud of smoke emerged from the center pillar, forming the number 23. Humph! He snickered at the others for no reason before walking to the table of warriors. Following number 23, many of the elves were sorted into the house warrior. Some of the elves ended up in the house of Rendmasters. If the elves were warriors, the dwarves were blacksmiths. Unlike the elves, every single dwarf ended up in the house of blacksmiths. There was not a single elf sitting on the table of blacksmiths. To Michael's surprise, when someone sorted into the house of alchemists, the entire hall was rather silent. Even the students sitting at the house alchemist table did not cheer for the new additions to their house. Michael did not know the reason for this exactly, but he deemed the alchemists were considered inferior compared to the rest of them. As a 5-star alchemist, he felt offended by the thought. One by one, everyone got sorted into their houses. Nothing interesting happened until a red-haired girl touched the pillar. This girl went after the girl who talked to him back on the train. When the girl touched the pillar, both the pillar of warriors and the pillar of Rendmasters let out a blazing glow. Even the proud elves were stunned beyond words. Number 34, Headmistress Kayla, stood up from her chair. As a headmistress of Mazeroth, she had seen many students with more than one specialization. She even saw a couple of students with 3 specialization talents. Every time they admitted new students, they would see 1 or 2 students with 2 specialization talents. You can choose either warriors or Rendmasters. The choice will be yours, and yours alone. Everyone stared at Victoria for her answer. While they were looking at Victoria, Michael was searching around to see her familiar because the girl didn't seem to have one on her. Only a couple of students remained without having a familiar, and she was one of them. Professor, I choose warriors. The moment Victoria chose the warriors, the students of Warrior House let out thunderous cheers. They were excited to welcome such a talented person to their house. The more talented students they had, the higher the chance to win the House Cup at the end of the year. Eventually, Michael's turn came as he stepped towards the pillar. Although the students had seen numerous students before him, they still had the same excited look on their faces as they had for the first student. System, you know what to do. He willed the system in his mind as he cut his palm with a dagger. He simply placed the bloody palm on the pillar, and then the pillars began to vibrate. The half-elf was rather curious to see the human specialization. His curiosity was soon answered when the rune on the alchemy pillar shone. As usual, the students looked bummed after he was sorted into the alchemists. Michael, on the other hand, was glad, and in fact, he was the one who ordered the system to manipulate the pillars. He did not want to draw attention by showing his true powers. If the system hadn't intervened, both the alchemist and warrior pillars would have lightened up brighter than Victoria. If that had happened, even Kayla would have been stunned because in the history of Mazeroth, only once did the alchemy pillar and the warrior pillars light up at the same time. It was by the Supreme Guardian Andreas. Number 66. Michael was given the number 66 as a student number. Eventually, after an hour, the sorting ceremony came to an end. As expected, Wilkes, the half-elf, was sorted into the house of Rendmasters. Unfortunately for Wilkes, there weren't any half-elves in the house of Rendmaster, and in fact, there was not a single half-elf other than him in the hall. Michael noticed not only elves and humans, but everyone isolating Wilax at the table. Only a couple of orcs remained still without moving away from Wilkes. Although Wilkes seemed to be used to this treatment by everyone, Nightmare could see the pain and anger in his heart through his eyes. I can turn this hate into loyalty, Michael said to himself, sitting on the alchemist's table. After the last dwarf got sorted into the house of blacksmiths, the sorting ceremony finally came to an end. The throne at the center of the staff table remained empty to the end, Headmistress Kayla yet again stood up from her chair with a wine glass and a silver spoon in her hand. She tapped the glass with her spoon. Students, the entire hall went silent. Let the feast begin. The golden plates and goblets on the tables were instant loaded up with delicious food. The new and the old students alike dug into the feast, devouring everything before them. The food could be on par with Raylene's cooking. Hence, even Michael was unable to resist the mouth-watering deliciousness in front of him. Everything in the cooking book could be seen on the table. There were roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, sausages, bacon, steak, joint steak, boiled potatoes, roasted potatoes, mashed potatoes, chips, pudding, peas, and carrots. The desserts such as blocks of assorted ice cream, apple pies, chocolate gatto, treacle tart, pumpkin tart, chocolate eclairs, and jam donuts, trifle, and strawberries were served for the students who craved sweets. After the last student licked his bowl clean, the food on the table magically disappeared as the table became empty once again. Now the student can take some time to bask yourselves in the beauty of Maze Roth. But remember, the forest to the west is forbidden for the students. Headmistress Kayla's words piqued his curiosity. If the forest was forbidden, he knew there must be some secret hiding within the forest, and that secret might be the dark elf he was looking for. Follow him, or he'll bite your head off. Nightmare threatened Wilkes when he tried to walk in the opposite direction of Michael. Chapter 432. Angels in the Nether Realm. Students. Headmistress Kayla called out the students. Please be aware that after midnight, your cultivation will be temporarily blocked. You are only allowed to use your arch energy during certain events. Now you can leave if you wish. The new students excitedly rushed out of the door to explore the castle. Michael also left the table without talking to his fellow alchemists. He was not in the mood to make new friends. Exiting the great hall, Michael walked aimlessly exploring the castle. Occasionally, the first years would bump onto him. They all looked so happy. Michael felt slightly jealous of them because they were having the best childhood unlike him. While he was their age, he was smuggling drugs and getting beaten up by the drug and weapon traffickers. He explored the grand staircase of Mazorth, which was used to access the various floors and rooms in the castle. The staircases were moving at regular intervals. There were hundreds of portraits hanging on the wall, and they seemed to be talking to each other. Surprisingly, some of them disappeared from their portraits when they noticed Michael staring at them. They looked afraid, as though they knew he was the Dark Lord. Michael did not mind them, as he was getting used to being the Dark Lord. He started to accept the fact he was the Dark Lord. The more he embraced his identity, the more powerful he became. After roaming around the castle for some time, he made his way outside, reaching the castle grounds. He walked further and further away from the castle under the light of millions of stars. What was in front of him was a massive lake, and on the other side of the lake was a forest which reminded him of the Forbidden Forests. The forest was thick with trees such as beech, oak, banyan, pine, and yew, as well as undergrowth such as knotgrass and thorns. With his X-ray eyes, he could notice the paths, brooks, and some clearings. Off the path, the way seemed almost impassable. System, something is blocking the communication between me and Azazel. Can you fix it? Of course the system can. The host just needs to pay 10,000 badass points. The system's greedy voice sounded in his voice. Fortunately, he amassed quite a bit of badass points during the battle in Hades. By quite a bit, he meant 60,000 badass points. Because of the battle, he was able to afford the fix. Do it and scan if I'm being watched. Done. Within a second, the system fixed the issue as Michael was able to contact Azazel yet again. Azazel, Lord Lucifer. I was trying to contact you. Azazel sounded slightly alarmed. Something happened? You talking to Ghost? Michael heard Iag's voice. Ghost, we have a fucking problem. Both Iag and Azazel sounded alarmed. He wondered why. We are not the only one who has a portal to the Netherrealm. There is someone else harvesting the undead, said Iag. She was quite annoyed rather than alarmed. They came out of seclusion because of Cain, as he said. He was having a bad feeling. She hated him for being right every single time. What do you mean harvesting? Asked Michael. They're putting the undeads into cages and teleporting them to who knows where through a portal. They're capturing all the powerful undead, Sarba explained to Michael. Do you know who they are? Somehow Michael doubted they would know the answer because whoever they were, they must be extremely powerful, and if they were harvesting the undeads, they were planning something nefarious. Powerful people with nefarious reasons would rarely be careless enough to let their identity be known to others. No, my lord, but they all look like angels, wings and metal armor, said Azazel. Ironic, isn't it? Angels harvesting undead's ghost. I have ordered Azazel to stop summoning undeads through our own portal. It might draw the attention of these unknown people. Michael heard Cain after Iag. If he was there, he would have done the same. He was glad Cain was there to deal with things when he and Gaia weren't around. We should monitor them continually before resuming the summoning. If they are building an undead army, just like us, we will need an army more than ever. So we can't stop the summoning forever. Record everything. Do as you said, but if they notice you, order Dalar to destroy the portal opener immediately. Will do, Cain agreed. Where is Gaia? Let's talk to her, but don't tell we asked. She's not here. Michael said to Iag. Someone's coming. Talk to you later. Michael quickly closed the connection when he heard rustling from behind. He slowly turned around. What are you doing here all alone? The young professor he saw at the staff table was standing in front of him with her brow arched up. There was no one in the area except him and the professor. Just sightseeing professor. From far away, Wilkes and Nightmare were looking at them. If it wasn't for the professor, they would have gone to meet Ghost. You were planning something 66, and whatever you were planning, it's not going to happen as long as I'm here. But she came closer to him. If you do something, her voice turned seductive as she ran her fingers through his chest. I can overlook and even give you some extra credits, she whispered into his ears seductively. Scan completed. The host is only being watched by Nightmare and the half-elf. The system encouraged him to make a move on the professor. It sounded amused. Is that so? Michael wrapped his arm around her wrist. Sounds dirty, but I like it. Michael pulled the professor closer to him. They both could feel each other's warm breath brushing past their faces. I hope you don't mind the fact I'm engaged. He gently bit her ears before whispering. Gaia, who was disguised as the professor, shivered with mixed feelings. Her anger was soaring through the roof, and tears formed in her eyes without her control. Nice disguise, but you forget to remove the ring on your finger, Professor. He chuckled. Her mind went blank for a second. The tears rolled out of her eyes as she felt so relieved knowing that he wasn't going to cheat on her. She planned to prank him, expecting him to chase away her thinking she was a professor. But her prank backfired chaotically when he did the opposite of her expectation. You fucking bastard, she began to pound his chest. You gave me a heart attack. Don't do that again. I will kill you. She became madder looking at Michael, who was laughing. It was because she looked extremely cute when she was mad, and he couldn't resist the urge to laugh. Wilkes was confused as he was staring at them with wide eyes. He never expected the human to be so lovey-dovey with a professor. Nightmare, on the other hand, was completely stunned. It took him a couple of minutes to notice the ring on the girl's finger. He finally realized what just happened. How did you end up like this? Asked Michael. They were still too close to each other. Gaia was hugging him as though she was a koala bear. It only took her a couple of minutes to explain to him what happened after she was teleported away by the system. After her story, Michael told her about what was happening in the Netherrealm. And just as they were about to talk about finding the Dark Elf, Gilrine came carrying a bucket full of grayish mushrooms. Gilrine squinted his eyes as for a second. He could swear they were hugging each other. However, when he realized the girl was the new professor, he dismissed the thought and cursed himself for thinking like that. What the hell are you doing? Before Gilrine could ask anything, Gaia shouted at him. The big man started to get freaked out by the new professor. Professor Alani asked for these rain cloud mushrooms. Professor Steinmeier, I assume these are for that moron who got his ass kicked by a dwarf. Gilrine was shocked to see Gaia calling a student moron. He had never seen a professor utter such a word so casually. He scratched his head, thinking about what to say next. I heard Professor Lane is talking about suspending that moron. It was funny, actually. First, he got his ass kicked by a dwarf, and now he's facing a suspension for getting his ass kicked. Gaia laughed. What was that about? Asked Michael. Professor Jane was the dark-robed professor with dark hair who was slapping a student in the Great Hall before the sorting ceremony. Michael was curious about what happened. Simple version, the guy is a warrior. Because of some reason, he chose to squabble with a dwarf in the House of Blacksmiths. According to him, the dwarf carefully planned and ambushed him, which is utter bullshit. He got his ass handed over to him by the dwarf. So what's going to happen to the dwarf professor? Since Gilrine was looking at them, Michael addressed Gaia as professor. Nothing, Gilrine said. He is a warrior and in House Warriors. Getting beaten up by the other house students is considered a shame as the warriors feel they are superior to the others. The student is lucky the head prefect did not expel him. Now Michael understood what was going on here. However, he had one doubt. Professor Steinmeier, I thought you were the head of House Warriors. I am. Gaia said, Professor Serene Jane is head of alchemists, and I heard he's been eyeing the combat teacher role for some time. Isn't it true, Gilrine? She turned her gaze towards Gilrine, who felt uncomfortable talking about the politics amongst the staff in front of student. Seeing how he reacted, Gaia rolled her eyes. I heard this from student, and it seems everyone knows it. No point in hiding, you big Dumbo. She stepped towards Gilrine. As the head of House Warriors, I have a right to know everything related to my house, and you're going to tell me everything. Gaia put her hand on Gilrine's shoulder and smiled. That smile freaked him out more. Or I'm going to shove those mushrooms so far up your ass, and you will taste them in your mouth. She left the area after threatening Gilrine. God, what just hit Maze Roth? Gilrine mumbled under his breath, looking at her figure disappearing into the darkness. Chapter 433, Mysterious Employer of 66-inch. Hey Gilrine, I want to ask you something. Michael came to Gilrine's side. The big man was still staring at the door that Gaia walked through. Hello. He had to pat Gilrine on the shoulder to get his attention. Oh, sorry, did you say something? Yeah, I want to ask if someone from another house could share the room with me. Gilrine was taken aback by surprise. No. God, no. You just came to Mazorth, and you already found a mate. The big man was frantically shaking his head. It's not a girl, he's just a friend, Michael quickly said before Gilrine could get another idea. Why can't he stay in his room? Asked Gilrine as Michael waved at Nightmare to bring Wilkes closer. Hearing the footsteps, Gilrine turned around and saw Wilkes walking towards them. The moment he saw the half-elf, Gilrine discovered why Ghost was asking such a question. Oh, Michael noticed the sadness emerge in Gilrine's eyes for a moment when he saw Wilkes. You can share rooms. There are no rules against a student from another house bunking in another house room. It's a common thing here. When Wilkes came to them, Gilrine patted Wilkes on the shoulder. Have it rough? It will get better. Don't fret about it. Gilrine sounded as though he had personal experience of getting bullied. It was obvious to everyone that Gilrine isn't a pure-blooded human. Michael guessed he might be half giant and half human. Compared to the humans, the elves were next-level racists. Hence, Wilkes was affected by the racism much more than Gilrine. Yeah, he's having it rough. So he will stay with us. Michael placed his hand on Wilkes' shoulder with a smile. Wilkes felt like he was being stared at by a predator as he swallowed a mouth full of saliva. Wilkes wasn't a soft-hearted one. The life on the streets forged him to be cold, cunning, and headstrong. However, something about the human before him sent a chill through his spine. You two should return to the Great Hall. Your prefects will be waiting there. Gilrine patted the youngsters before gently stroking Nightmare's chin. Good luck with your classes tomorrow. Especially in your combat classes. Professor Steinmeier freaks me out. You didn't see? Wilkes asked. Gilrine saw what? Nothing. Come on, 45. It's way past your bedtime. Michael dragged him away from Gilrine before Wilkes spilled the beans about Gaia and him. See you tomorrow, Gilrine. Michael waved at Gilrine before making his way to the Great Hall. The Great Hall was once again packed with students when he arrived. Few of the elves gave Wilkes a death glare, while some just ignored him completely as though he didn't exist. Michael could care less about these racist assholes. House alchemists, follow me in an orderly manner, said a curly brown-haired youngster. Arch energy flow will be blocked in 3, 2, 1. A voice echoed through the hall. When the voice said 1, the arch energy in the hall disappeared. However, Michael did not feel any difference. In fact, he could feel the arch energy running in his body. The changes the system made to you when you were in the southern continent applies in Ukulun realm too. You can thank me now. It's not like you did it for free. Anyways, I appreciate the help, said Michael in his mind. As they were following the perfect, more and more elves down the hall were staring at Wilkes. Some of the elves were slapping him on the head for no reason. The perfect seemed to ignore it, and Michael started to get annoyed by this. Fuckers, Wilkes cursed under his breath. When he received the invitation to join Maze Roth, he was happy in his life for the first time. He thought he would finally be free of elves and their bullying. His fantasy was shattered as he realized this place was no different than ours, filled with elves. On top of these racist bullies, he ended with a human who somehow saw him breaking space rings and stealing stuff. Wilkes still had no idea what the human wanted from him. As Michael expected, they followed the prefect to a wall where there was a portrait of a lady with green hair hanging on. Password, the lady asked in a melodious voice. Proporium triecto. The portrait swung forward to reveal a round hole in the wall. They all scrambled through it and found themselves in the alchemist's common room, a cozy, square room. Once they arrived inside the room, they were welcomed by the roaring fire, squashy armchairs, and sofas. The dormitories were reached by climbing the winding mahogany staircase, decorated with emerald green. Posters of a few old people and a 12-feet-tall, massive painting of a green-haired lady with 2 saplings in her hand were covered with thick golden blankets. She was one of the 4 founders of Maze Roth and the patron of House Alchemist, Ingrid Stenham. Gold chandeliers cast a warm glow all around, making the room cozier and shinier. The room was full of squashy armchairs, tables, and a bulletin board where school notices, ads, lost posters, etc. could be posted. The common room was decorated in several shades of emerald green, which was associated with the house. The common room was comfortable, but not more comfortable than the Warrior House basement. There were also bookcases located in the room, filled with various novels and forms of literature. The room was instantly hated by Michael due to the lack of darkness, and to be exact, too much green. He wanted to wear sunglasses to cover his eyes from all the greenness. Boys' rooms are this way. The perfect pointed to the mahogany staircase at the far end of the room. Girls are through that door. He then pointed at the door on the right as the girls made their way to their rooms instead of spending some time in the common room. Michael and Wilkes reached the dormitory by climbing the stairs. In front of them was a narrow corridor, and on either side of the corridors were doors that had no number of any sort. Take a room you like. We have so many. The prefect's voice came from behind as the boys began to get into a room one by one. Michael loved some privacy and silence, hence, he chose the last room at the far end of the corridor. The room was equipped with a centrally located mini fireplace and a bunk bed flanked by a set of windows and space for storing personal belongings. On the windowsill, a water jug was placed in case any of the students should feel the need for a drink in the middle of the night. A wooden board was located on either side of the bed. A wooden chair and dresser were located on one side of the bed, near the nightstand. A wooden bookcase was located on the other side of the bed, with books on top of it. The room had stone walls and wooden floors. The windows had emerald green curtains, just like the carpet with the house crest, a single tree in the center of it. They'll take the top bed. Michael took off his silver long coat and hung it on the dresser before jumping up onto his bed. Are you going to tell me who the hell are you, and what do you want from me? Nightmare flapped his wings to land on Michael's chest. What's your plan in life? Instead of answering Wilkes' question, he questioned Wilkes. You're going to live your whole life scrounging for coins like a petty thief? Asked Michael. Nah, he will get caught one day and probably die in prison. If he didn't get beaten to death first, so you two are now my well-wishers? Wilkes rolled his eyes, plugging into the comfy chair beside him. We can be, Nightmare said. There's someone who would pay a lot for your talent. Wilkes, is that so? Wilkes leaned back to listen to his sales pitch. Since you might have grown up in the streets, you probably know what kind of men would pay a lot for thieves like you. As a matter of fact, I know, and I've worked for many. I probably know the person you're talking about. Trust me, you don't. No one knows him. You just do our work without asking any questions, and he would pay you quite handsomely. What are you saying? Hey, I'm just a petty thief. I stole a scroll years ago, which showed me how to break open space rings okay. Here, I said it. What kind of work can I do to earn a lot? I'm not a cultivation monster like you, but you are a rune master and my employer is looking for an ambitious rune master. Your star level doesn't matter. If you serve him well, he can make you climb up the star levels and even reach the 6-star level. You can't bullshit a bullshitter 66, or whatever your name is. Knock. Knock. Someone knocked on the door. Wilkes was closer to the door, so he opened the door to see an old lady with a trolley full of stacks of clothes. Oh, the woman seemed surprised to see a half-elf. Several seconds later, she put a smile on her face. Your uniforms, dear? 2 alchemist robes, I presume? Asked the old woman. Nah, Wylax shook his head, pretending he didn't see the surprised look on her face. 1 alchemist and 1 rune master, please. The old woman picked up an emerald green robe from the top of the trolley and a navy blue one from under. He handed over the neatly pressed robes to Wilkes. There he is. Just when the lady was about to turn the trolley and leave, a tall, lean, and mean-looking elf arrived. He was not alone. He had a group of 5 elves behind him. All of them were wearing gray robes with golden borders. Sensing the trouble, the old woman rushed away from the room as fast as her old legs could move. Oh, no, you don't. The elves grabbed the door before Wylax could shut it close. Nightmare craned his neck to see 5 elves walking into their room like they owned the room. One of the elves leading the group pushed Wilkes onto the chair behind. So the filthy rat is hiding in the sewers. Guys, should we not do this now? Wilkes tried to wiggle himself out of the trouble. This is the perfect time to do this. Guys, close the door. We don't want the rat to escape, do we? The elf put his leg Wilkes' chest and pressed him against the chair. Evindel, do we really have to waste this healing potion on him? The elven girl asked worriedly. She seemed to care more about the healing potion than what was about to happen to Wilkes. We can't risk getting expelled, Lena, especially because of this filth. The elves completely ignored Michael. Nightmare turned his head towards Michael and saw him laid down on the bed with his eyes closed. He did not seem like he was going to intervene. We really shouldn't do this, said Wilkes, or we like to do plap. The elf slapped Wilkes with enough force to produce an ear-piercing sound. The hand mark was imprinted on Wilkes' pale face. His face reddened. Goot-plap. Wilkes' words were abruptly interrupted by another slap. This time, blood started to seep through his nostrils due to the force. Ghost, do something. Nightmare whispered, yet Ghost remained still. Chapter 434. The Prophecy Breaker. Let him get softened up a bit more, Michael nonchalantly said to Nightmare, and continued to lay down on the bed with his eyes closed. Meanwhile, the elves began to get rougher and rougher. Wilkes growled in pain. Before coming to Maze Roth, Wilkes lived in the slum area of Kingdom Lantis. The elves hated coming to that part of the area. Wilkes learned to hide, and he seldom got the attention of the elves after he grew up. However, in Maze Roth, he had a target on his back. He had no place to run away anymore. He thought Maze Roth would be different, but now he realized that Maze Roth could be worse than Lantis. Nightmare wanted to save Wilkes, but after what happened last time, when he tried to save Sabrina, Nightmare obeyed Michael's order not to get into trouble by helping people prematurely. As Nightmare was looking at Michael and Wilkes, the elves began to stomp Wilkes on the chest. Hey, don't kill him, the elven girl shouted, seeing Wilkes puking out blood. We have a healing potion. The beating had crossed the point of bullying. They were killing Wilkes. Take the deal 45, or this will be the rest of your life. Getting beaten up, finally, Michael opened his mouth again. The elves stopped the beating for a second to turn their gazes towards Michael. Michael jumped down from the bunk bed / he rolled up his sleeves to his elbows, slowly walking towards the group of elves. The elven woman was taken aback by him as she stared at him for a few moments without even blinking. He was on par with the elven princes of Ar in terms of good-looking, and unlike the elven princess, his body was rough and muscular. She was undressing him in her mind as she couldn't help it. The white shirt he wore stretched to the point it looked as though it was going to tear apart. Deal, look at this human asshole. The leader of this elven gang snickered at Michael. What do you want? The elf asked grimly. He was not threatened by Michael's physique. To give you a choice, said Michael, cracking his neck. You see, this half-elf works for me now. So the employer-employee contract says any damage to the employee by racist assholes will result in the assholes getting their bones broken up. the elf's face turned in overwhelming anger. The elves believed they were the superior race, and every other race was beneath them. Thus, Michael's words kindled the anger flame inside them. The other elves showed the same reaction as the leader elf. Even the elven girl frowned as she wanted to rip his tongue out for insulting them. You just made the worst mistake in your pathetic life, Mago. You and your friends can leave now, or one of you can carry your racist butts in a bucket. Wilkes was growling on the ground. If he wasn't overwhelmed by pain, he would have been surprised by Michael because he was picking up a fight with 5 elves without the ability to cast spells. Now I'm going to count to 3. Maggot, the elf, stepped forward. 2. The moment the word 2 came out of his mouth, Michael head-butted the elf, breaking his nose. In a snap of time, he slammed the elf's head onto the wall nearby and elbowed his head rapidly. The elves were stunned as everything happened so fast. The elf fell with blood spraying out of his nose. The elf did not move at all. Nightmare wondered if the elf was dead or alive. While the elves were stunned, Michael grabbed a thick book from the book rack on his right and used the spine of the book to break another nose. This time, the other elves reacted as they threw their fists at Michael. Michael hit the elf's nose with the book yet again before slapping the fist of the girl so hard her wrist turned another side. Ah! The girl screamed in agony. The girl was so delicate and Michael was so strong. Hence, his single slap on her wrist broke her wrist. The elf who got hit by the book stumbled back due to the force of his nose breaking. The leader elf was lying on the ground beside Wilkes. The girl was screaming in agony, and another elf was knocked out. Only 2 elves remained, but fear started to cloud the hearts of the remaining 2. Michael was too fast. They couldn't cope with his speed. Michael did not stop with breaking the girl's wrist. He threw the book, which now had blood on the cover, at one elf. The elf stumbled back as he walked towards them, stepping over the elf, who got his nose broken by the book. The elf puked blood as Wilkes did when Michael stepped over his chest. Ark! The girl was still screaming, holding her broken wrist. But her scream was abruptly stopped by a knee to her face. The force immediately knocked her out cold. Seeing the girl get knocked out by the human caused the last 2 elves to boil in anger. They mustered their courage to dash at him. Michael evaded their fists with ease. Plap! He slapped one elf on the face, making him stumble back and fall down. The other elf was unlucky as he grabbed his hand and punched the elbow, snapping the bone in half. The elf screamed, but Michael did not give a shit about his agony. He grabbed the elf by his neck and rapidly punched him in the face until the elf's rosy face got painted red with his blood. When Michael turned to look at the elf who did not get knocked out cold by him, his eyes flickered in crimson red. In pain and fear, the elf did not notice his eyes flickering. Michael bent down and picked up the healing potion from the ground near the elven girl. Get out of my room. His gaze sent a chill running through the elf's spine. He quickly got himself back to his feet and dragged his friends outside the room as fast as he could. Michael then threw the healing potion as it was nothing to Wilkes. What have you done? After chugging the healing potion and getting back on his feet, Wilkes asked Michael. He was back on his bunk bed, bullied the bullies. That fucking idiots. Why can't they leave me alone? Wilkes cursed the elves before crashing down on the chair. This is our first day here, and we are already in a big trouble. Now we aren't. If anyone is in trouble, it's them, said Nightmare. Wilkes looked surprised as Nightmare began to explain what Gilrine and Gaia said about the dwarf beating up a guy from the warrior house. Although what he heard from Nightmare surprised him, the story did make sense to Wilkes. The elves are like snakes, man. Once they target you, they won't rest until you're under 6 feet. Humph, Nightmare snickered. Neither Wilkes nor the elves had any idea about what he was capable of. As far as Nightmare was concerned, they were lucky that Michael was able to control himself. In case the third persona took control, they would have been lying on the ground in their own pool of blood. I don't think the warriors would let go scot-free after someone beat up their house students. I hope we don't get expelled, Wilkes sighed. I don't give a shit about this school, and you shouldn't either. If you aim to get rich and powerful, there are better ways, and the choice you made is the best way, said Michael. He wanted to get some shut-eye before starting his search for the elf in the tree. He had no idea where the elf might be or how big the Ukulun realm was. He was having second thoughts about using drones to scour the realm for the elf, as the drones might get detected by some arrays, if Mazeroth have any, and it was highly likely that they have numerous defense mechanisms. Somewhere else in the Ukulon realm, Eladir, the elf Michael and Gaia were searching for, was looking at the dark sky above him. The sky was ominous and dark like never before. There was not a single star or speck of glow in the dark sky. It was pitch black void of any light. The ominous sky put a smile on his face. One could not see his smile, though, because his face was merged with a tree and barks covered most of his body. "He is here," Eladir said. He closed his eyes, mumbling something under his breath. Several glowing runes appeared on the tree. The banyan tree withered immediately, but soon the tree turned into its previous self. However, the leaves fell off the tree and began to form a cyclone. A couple of seconds later, the cyclone took a shape of a humanoid shape. "Find him. Where there is blood, he will be there." The humanoid figure made of leaves flew away with the wind, leaving Eladir alone. The Great War has finally begun. The Sky Hall went so far to prevent the Dark Lord from appearing in this world. 3,000 years ago, the Order of Death was wiped off by the Sky Hall and the Guardians. They failed the Dark Lord, and their failure resulted in Sky Hall prisoning the soul of the Dark Lord in a void universe. Only a few in this world knew the origins of the Dark Lord and what the Sky Hall did to him. The reason they left him alive was only Eladir knew how to open the portal back to Earth, and if the Sky Hall managed to cast the Dark Lord back to his cage, he wouldn't come back to this universe for the rest of his life. Suddenly, Eladir looked up to see a bright glow appear in the sky. Alas, the prophecy breaker appeared. Chapter 435. Unruly Professor Steinmeier. The next morning, Michael reluctantly put on the emerald green robes of the alchemy house and left his room with Wilkes. Nightmare was called to another classroom where they trained the familiars. Since Nightmare was curious about the other dragons and the magical beasts, Michael let the dragon go. The robes were similar to the robes worn by the Hogwarts students with a few adjustments. There were clear signs to guide them toward their first class. Through the labyrinth of corridors, they reached a red oak door that had the sign Combat Hall hanging above. The combat class took place on the first floor, Class 86. In the classroom, an iron chandelier hung from the ceiling, as well as a huge dragon skeleton. On one end of the classroom stood a projector that was activated by magic. Several desks and tables could be found in the classroom, as well as some sets of large windows. Calling it a classroom was an understatement. It was a large hall big as some throne halls. The classroom was gloomy as curtains had been drawn over the windows and was lit by candlelight. Portraits of various fighting forms and battlefields adorned the walls. Some portraits were showing people who appear to be in pain, sporting grisly injuries or strangely contorted body parts. Inside the classroom, nobody spoke as they settled down, looking around at the shadowy, gruesome pictures. All the houses were required to take combat classes. Hence, the hall was filled with students wearing various color uniforms. When Michael and Wilkes entered the classroom, the students sitting in the front row stared at them, and immediately a look of scorn appeared on their faces. Wilkes got the worst of it, because many just ignored Michael, but almost half of the students were staring at Wilkes with disgust, especially the elves. In the classroom, elves occupied the first 3 rows in the front. The humans sat behind them, and dwarves and orcs occupied the tables before the last row. No one sat on the last row except for a few beastmen. Because the last row attracted less crowd, the row was pretty empty. Michael did not attend any schools, but still, he liked to sit on the last bench, because, in his mind, that's where the legends would sit. A few human girls made space for Michael to sit beside them when he was walking to them. However, Michael ignored them and went to the last bench. Wilkes slid into the space to get to the place near the window. Michael placed the stack of books in his hand on the table. "Look, the elves you beat up last night." Wilkes nudged Michael's elbow. Michael looked at the front row where the elves were staring at him. When his gaze fell on them, they quickly looked away as though they were never staring at him with killing intent. Wilkes began rummaging through the books one by one. Every single book was a couple of inches thick and heavy. "You know how to read?" asked Michael. "I'm not illiterate thanks to Mentor Orc, Mentor Orc? That's what we call him in the slums. No one knew his real name or why he spent his time teaching the orphans in the slums. Wilkes was grateful to the orc, and Michael could see that in his eyes. They looked at the orcs who occupied the middle benches. Unlike the rest of the students, the orcs were sitting in silence, reading their books. They did not seem violent at all despite their scary looks. The dwarves were the rowdy kids, as they already started to tear the pages from the books and build ships, ducks, and all kinds of things and threw at the human girls. "You're going to learn combat by reading books?" Snickered Michael, seeing Wilkes reading the thick black book. "Why else do we have this book?" Michael just shook his head before leaning back on the wall and stretching his legs out. He used his hands as pillows to cushion his head. The longer they spent without a teacher, the louder the classroom became. The elven girls were staring at the door, eagerly waiting for their combat teacher. Creak! Almost half an hour past their class time. The door creaked open. Wilkes craned his neck to see the professor, who was intimate with 6060 last night, entering the classroom with a honey bun and a large mug. Gaia approached the teacher's table located at the front of the classroom before a large blackboard. She placed the mug on the table. "Get your asses up!" Gaia slammed the table as the students were shaken by her. They immediately stood. To attract less attention, Michael too stood up. However, he was laughing inside so much. He couldn't wait to see Gaia's atrocities as the combat teacher. "Didn't anyone tell you to stand up and greet the teacher when they enter the classroom?" asked Gaia, looking at the classroom. "Wait, you're the combat teacher?" The dwarves murmured. "You have a problem with that, you short fuck." The elves almost coughed up blood when they heard her yell at the dwarves. The dwarves were stunned beyond words. None of them expected to get yelled at like this. Many doubted she could be their teacher because she was too young and too unruly. "I am Professor Steinmeier. I came here to teach you noobs how not to get yourself killed. Now move your asses. We are going out." And just as Gaia took a step towards the door, an elven girl raised her hand. Gaia looked over her shoulder to see her silver-haired girl from the front row raising her hand. "What? Aren't we going to start with Chapter 1? "Chapter 1? Frowned Gaia. She made herself to the front row and snatched the book from another elven boy. "Give me that." The students realized their professor was reading the combat book for the first time in her life by looking at the surprised look on her face. "What is this shit?" "You're going to learn combat by reading books." "That's what he said," Wilkes mumbled. "Basics of combat. How to defend yourself. Magic defense, sword theory, dual wielding, archery." Gaia rummaged through the book before throwing it away. Only morons would expect to learn the art of combat by reading books. Unless your pathetic plan is to kill your opponent by boring him to death, you have to move your asses and try to grasp what I teach you. Leave your fucking books and follow me. She turned again to walk towards the door when another elven girl raised her hand. "I swear to God, if you ask anything remotely related to the book, I will barbecue your ass and feed it to the giant eagles." The girl quickly put her hands down. Although the elves were not at all delighted to see a human teaching them the art of combat, they did not dare to show their arrogance to Gaia, because she held the position of the professor. Everyone stepped out of their tables and followed her in an orderly manner. "You know her?" asked Wilkes, following Michael behind. "I saw you saw what?" Wilkes was surprised. "You know what? Where are we going? She seems like a crazy bitch." "No shit. I have a bad feeling about her. Although she called you a short fuck. We're the same height. You moron." The dwarves were bitching about Gaia while moving forward in the line. "She is interesting. I feel we're going to learn a lot from her compared to the dwarves." The orcs were such nice guys. They were praising Gaia regardless of how she acted. Michael was truly surprised to see how these orcs behaved. They seemed peaceful and friendly. Several minutes later, they reached the outskirts of the forest spanning to the west. The forest was dark and gloomy, and radiated an eerie feeling. The trees in the forest were malady brown. Grains of poison begrimed the bark and gleamed like witch dust. The smoky air and stifling atmosphere provided the perfect abode for those who worshipped the darkness rather than the light. In the dense shadows, spiders clutched their snare strings. Their webs shimmered like meshed steel dipped in silver. The forest looked primordial, dark, and gloomy as the dark forest where Michael lives. Centuries-old trees with sprawling limbs guarded the darkness, blotting out any sunlight. Bewailing sounds ghosted through the trees. Whether it was from prey or a predator, only the forest could tell. It was truly a place to make everyone's veins freeze over. "Form a circle," Gaia said, amplifying her voice with arch energy. "I assume you all have your weapons with you." The students nodded. Many were gawking at the forest. Their faces looked pale due to fear. "Your first lesson: go to the forest and survive for 30 minutes. If you step out of the forest before the clock runs out, you will be on the roster to clean the latrines for a week." The students were stunned. Their jaws dropped a few inches as one elf shouted, "You can't do this. The Black Forest is forbidden to the students. You can't ask us to risk our lives." Gaia stomped the ground as a pebble rocketed to her hand. With a swift kick to the pebble, she sent the pebble soaring towards the elf. "Ark!" The elf screamed when the pebble broke his nose. The pebble hit the elf right between his eyes with deadly accuracy. "Go cry to your mommy." Boohoo! The elf was too ashamed. His body shivered in anger, as he had never been ashamed like this in his life before. He could not stand there anymore as he rushed away from the group. "If you bitches are too afraid to roam around the safest areas of the forest, you shouldn't have come to Maze Roth. This is a place for winners, not for cowardly losers. Are you winners or spineless losers?" Michael wondered why she was trying to send the students into the forest. As expected, the students did not shout, but mumbled the word winners meekly. "What is she doing?" From a distance, an elderly woman with a hunched back was looking at Gaia and the students. Headmistress Kayla stood beside her with a curious look on her face, trying something new, I guess. Chapter 436. A mountain troll. The further they walked into the forest, the lesser they saw what was in front of them. The paths were barely passable. Wilkes could hardly keep up with him without losing sight of him. "Do you know how to climb trees?" asked Michael, stopping under a huge birch tree. "Because I'm a half-elf, you expect me to know how to climb a tree?" Wilkes misunderstood Michael. He didn't realize Michael was really going to get onto a branch on top until Michael fired a metal hook from the Mark III bracers he was wearing around his wrist. In a blink of an eye, he was on top of the tree. Wilkes looked up at the tree with his mouth wide open. "Grab this tight." Wilkes grabbed onto the metal hook tightly. The next thing he knew, he was getting lifted off the ground. "What the hell?" Wilkes grabbed onto the tree to balance himself. He didn't even want to look down as they were standing too high from the ground. Whoosh! A gust of wind flew past his face. "Why is he here?" Wilkes turned to see Professor Steinmeier standing between them on the tree branch. She was staring at him. "Professor? What's your plan?" asked Gaia, ignoring Wilkes. After Wilkes went to sleep last night, Michael and Gaia talked about everything through the earpiece. Since Gaia just came up with the plan to send the students into the forest just this morning, Michael was in the dark. You know what they say when you want to hide a tree? Hide it in the forest. In our case, they might have literally hidden the elf somewhere in this forest. "I need an excuse to get you here," said Gaia. The way Professor Steinmeier put her hand on 60SX's shoulder creeped out Wilkes. He couldn't believe how a professor of a prestigious academy like this could have a relationship with a student. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that they might know each other before coming to Maze Roth. "I did some digging. This place hasn't been monitored by any arrays, so it's safe." Their conversation didn't make any sense to Wilkes. He felt pretty awkward and unsafe standing on the branch. Michael had already scanned their surroundings and made sure that they were not being watched. However, he did not want to deploy the drones and spiders in front of Wilkes. The point was to show Wilkes how powerful his mysterious employer is. "Keep digging. If the elf is here, I don't think we can find him without any help. Let's go searching." By giving the students the assignment to survive in the forest, she gave both Michael and her the chance to roam through the woods searching for the elf without raising any suspicion. "Should we take him with us?" asked Gaia. "Why not?" The next moment, Gaia grabbed Wilkes by the back of his neck before jumping down from the branch. "Arg! Fuck!" Wilkes screamed. When they landed on the ground, Wilkes was breathing heavily as he was terrified. "You sure he'll be of use to us?" Who are you people?" Gaia put her hand on Wilkes' shoulder. He could feel her gently squeezing his shoulder. "The people who could make you very rich or very dead. ARGHHHHHHHH. Suddenly a scream echoed through the forest. They immediately looked in the direction of the scream. "Huh, do you feel that?" asked Wilkes, feeling the ground trembling. The tremble increased by the second to the point it felt like they were having a powerful earthquake. "Argah!" The screams of the students reverberated in the forest louder and louder. "Something's coming this way." Wilkes looked terrified as expected. Gaia took off on the ground like a bullet through the canopy. It didn't even take a minute before she came back with a pale face. "We have to go," she sounded alarmed. "What did you see?" asked Michael. "We don't have time. There's a fucking mountain troll coming this way." "What the fuck is a mountain troll?" Wilkes shrieked. "Come on, run." Gaia pushed Michael and Wilkes to run. She could fly away unlike Wilkes and Michael. To hide his ability to use arch energy, Michael had to avoid flying or using any spells. Hence his only way to escape was to run. "Didn't you read the fucking book they gave you?" Wilkes almost puked blood. She threw away the book and mocked them for having a combat book. She talked as though she loathed having books for combat class, yet at a moment like this, she was yelling at him for not reading the book. It was obvious that she read the whole book, unlike what she pretended. Although Michael did not know what a mountain troll is, he wasn't going to wait around. He started to run towards the castle as Wilkes ran behind him. Grrrr! A thunderous growl shook the forest as they were running. "I hate this place," Wilkes shouted while he was running. They ran as fast as they could without looking back. However, the trembling indicated that the mountain troll was getting close to them. The sound of trees shattering and cracking could be heard on top of the screaming sounds of the students. Seeing the light at the end of the forest gave Wilkes enough boost to push his body to the extreme. As a half-elf, Wilkes was born with extreme agility and speed. No human had ever outrun Wilkes. He was able to run through the woods as the forest was his playground thanks to his nimble body and the training he had since he was born. Nonetheless, he was barely able to keep up with 66. Surprisingly, this was 66 did not look like he was pushing his body to the limit. He seemed calm and collected regardless of the mountain troll chasing them. With a final push, Wilkes and Michael jumped out of the woods and reached the ground between the forest and Maze Roth Castle. They saw students running to the castle like a bat out of hell. Michael was neither in the shape to fight nor wanted to fight the mountain troll, which would defeat his purpose of staying anonymous. Grrrr! After putting some distance between the forest and them, they heard an ear-piercing, thunderous roar coming from behind. They looked over their shoulder to see a 15-feet humanoid beast with gray skin, a bald head, and overgrown ears roaring to the sky. In its giant hands, it held a grown tree. The troll used the tree as a club. The troll's belly looked as though it just ate a few buffaloes whole. Even from a distance, the putrid smell that came from the mountain troll made Wilkes' face go green. "Run!" Gilrein's shout attracted Michael's attention as well as the other students. It was not like Michael planned to stay put and watch the troll. He was just momentarily stunned to see a mountain troll in real life. "Run, human. The troll is resistant to all magic attacks." Michael heard Gaia's voice in his head. Defeating a 15-feet giant without spells was impossible, even for him. He was strong, but not strong enough to defeat the mountain troll. It would squash him like a bug if he picked up a fight with the troll. Besides, Michael had no intention to fight with the troll. The more he pushed himself, the harder it would be to prevent the third person from showing up. "Where the heck are the professors?" Wilkes asked while running with him. "Calm down, boy." Michael saw Gilrein approach the troll with his hands reached out. "What the fuck is he doing?" "It's not a dog he could tame." Wilkes growled, looking over her shoulder. The mountain troll surprisingly stopped roaring. It tilted its head, looking at Gilrein. The troll stood still as Gilrein slowly approached the troll, daring not to make any sudden moves. Grrrr! Yet, when he was just a few meters away from the troll's eyes flickered in red as it raised the tree in its hand high in the sky to squash Gilrein with it. Boom! The very next moment, a rainbow color beam shot out from the sky and landed between Gilrein and the mountain troll. The force of the beam pushed the mountain troll a couple of steps back. The bright light radiated from the beam made the troll close its eyes for a second. Michael knew it was a teleportation beam, and he wondered who would step out of the beam. Wilkes, on the other hand, expected a bunch of people or the guards or the professors to step out of the beam to kill the troll. However, who was there when the light beam disappeared was a girl in ocean blue robes. She was taller than average girls and wore clothes that screamed wealth. Her raven black hair fluttered in the wind. Michael could not see her face, but by the look of her arms, he could tell she was a trained warrior. Standing in front of the mountain troll, the girl never moved a muscle. She remained as calm as the sea. "Leave the girl," ordered Gilrine. Her authoritative voice shook Gilrine as his legs automatically started to move backward. Michael failed to see any magical fluctuations around her, which meant, just like the students, she was too unable to use arch energy. GRRRR. The mountain troll changed its target from Gilrine to the girl in front of it. It once again raised the tree in its hand higher to attack the girl. Chapter 437. The Holy Maiden. GRRRR. The mountain troll roared before smashing the club on the ground to squash her. However, the girl threw the blade, aiming at the troll's chest. The blade impaled the mountain troll. The chain attached to the blade grew shorter and shorter as she used the blade as a pulley to reach the mountain troll. Boom! At this time, the mountain troll smashed the ground, creating a deep crater. The troll lifted off the tree to see there was no blood and felt the girl running on its shoulder. GRRRRR. The mountain troll roared violently, slapping itself to catch the girl. She was fast. In frustration and anger, the troll raised its club once again. This time, however, the girl fired the two blades in her hand, aiming at the tree in the troll's hand. She jumped off from the troll's shoulder, holding the two blades tight. She yanked the chains attached to her blades to bring down the tree on the troll's head. When she landed on the ground, the troll lost control of the tree in its hand. GGGRRRR. Bam! With a final yank, the girl brought the tree hard on the troll's head. Wilkes realized the tree was heavier than it looked when it split open the troll's head like an egg. The girl did not even turn back to see the troll's body as it hit the ground with a loud, booming sound. The blades reached her hand. She put the blades into the sheaths hanging on her back. Michael had been fascinated by the girl. She was so badass. The battle with the troll ended before it even began. Only a battle-hardened warrior would be able to pull off what the girl just did. Moreover, she did not use any arch energy or spells. It was her raw strength. After Noah, this girl seemed to be a tougher opponent. He had a feeling that if they battled, he might lose the battle. Mythic! Gilrine cried out loud, running towards the fallen troll. The girl did not remain there, but left the area. Several professors were running towards the mountain troll, while the prefects came rushing out to escort the students to their dorms. "Who is that?" asked Wilkes in shock. Michael stared at the girl disappearing into the castle. "I have a feeling we will meet soon," he said to himself before turning back to leave for their rooms. Gilrine in the distance knelt beside the mountain troll with tears gushing out of his eyes. His sobbing sound was loud enough for everyone to hear. Back in the castle, a hunched old woman walking with a supportive staff was walking from one end to another in a spacious room. It was a large and beautiful circular room, full of weird little noises. Several gold instruments stood on spindle-legged tables, whirring and emitting little puffs of smoke. The walls were covered with portraits of old men and women, all of whom were snoozing gently in their frames. There was also a throne made of ice. The old woman's pace came to a halt when she saw the door creak open. "Holy Maiden!" The old woman's back already looked like it was bowing down due to her hunchback. Still, when she saw the girl, she bowed further down. "Bai Ning." The girl nodded before making her way to the throne. The air around the throne was chilly enough to freeze someone's bones. Still, the girl sat comfortably on the throne without showing any signs of pain. She seemed extremely comfortable and dominant. "I told you can address me as Rowena in private." The girl who stunned Michael was none other than Noah's elder sister. He had no idea that she was his big sister. The position of Holy Maiden was only given to a cultivator with extremely rare yang energy in their body. The position was held by no one for the last 3,000 years until Rowena. Her successor, the previous Holy Maiden, was said to have reached the celestial stage and parted the world to the realm of angels. That was an incredibly dangerous Holy Maiden. Bai Ning stomped the ground with her staff. In her voice, one could notice the anger but also care. "I'm alive, and the troll isn't," Rowena said with an expressionless face. "Kayla should put a leash on her professors." The woman hunched her way towards the table, flicked her wrist to take out the teapot's set, and began to brew tea for the Holy Maiden. The tea she brewed was radiating smoke. However, the tea was not hot. It was freezing to the bone. If anyone else drank it instead of her, the weak would die in a matter of seconds, while the strong might live only when they warm their body to an extreme temperature. "Have you located the primordial flames?" asked Rowena, taking sips of her bone-chilling tea. "The spell has narrowed the search area, but we still need some time." "What about the demon?" Bai Ning waved her hands as a large bowl full of glistening blue liquid appeared on the table. The old woman poured a red liquid into the bowl and stared at the red liquid fuse with the blue liquid. "Somehow the demon has been escaping my location spells. Then the devil is not alone." "The sooner we find it, the better," said Rowena. "The world is not ready to accept the existence of higher realms. If they knew they had a demon walking among them, it would cause a massive panic wave. Demons, imposters, wars, famine, hunger, the great clans are supposed to fix these. They are becoming incompetent by the day." Bai Ning was a straightforward person. She had never held back her thoughts. Hence, she called the great clans incompetent in front of Rowena, whose brother is in one of the great clans, the Guardian Guild. And the other task, the air in the room, became chillier. Bai Ning stopped looking at the bowl and turned her gaze towards Rowena. The Guardian should handle a Holy Maiden. The Sky Hall shouldn't meddle with Dash. Bai Ning was interrupted by the sudden coldness she felt in her body. Rowena crushed the teacup in her hand before standing up from her throne. "Someone targeted my family. I made it clear you find them and bring them to me." The old woman stepped backward in fear, although she had higher cultivation. Bai Ning was afraid of the Holy Maiden. They couldn't measure Rowena's power using just cultivation stages. She was a being in the making to become a goddess, and Bai Ning did not want the wrath of a goddess to fall upon her. Rowena's eyes flicked in blue like a pair of sapphires. "My family is more important than Sky Hall. You have 3 days to find the assassins." Bai Ning could barely breathe. She just nodded her head in fear and waited for Rowena to leave the room. "The elders need to know this." After Rowena left the room, Bai Ning mumbled under her breath. Meanwhile, Gaia and Gilrine were standing in a cozy room. The room had a large fireplace, windows overlooking the training grounds and the battle arena, and a sparse stone-floored bedroom behind a concealed door. Headmistress Kayla was staring at both of them. Her eyes were like daggers cutting through Gaia and Gilrine. "A mountain troll? What were you thinking, Gilrine?" Gilrine was shivering. He was swallowing a mouth full of saliva and nervousness. "And you, Professor Steinmeier," Kayla turned her focus on Gaia. "You should have been more careful. How the hell would I know this crazy brat was raising a bloody mountain troll in the Black Forest?" "Mythic," Gilrine mumbled under his breath. His eyes were still teary due to the loss of his beloved mountain troll. Kayla sighed. "Explain yourself, Gilrine. Why were you keeping a mountain troll in the Black Forest?" Gilrine looked awkward as he looked between Kayla and Gaia. "Professor Steinmeier," seeing Gilrine hesitating to explain himself in front of Gaia, Headmistress Kayla realized that he must be keeping the mountain troll for a reason. Hence, Kayla first wanted to deal with Gaia and sent her away. "I am not going to tell you how to conduct your classes, but please be more vigilant. Lives could have been lost today. You'll be more careful." Professor Kayla, Gaia nodded as she did not want to argue with Kayla when she was a frickin' imposter. Gaia turned back, showing her back to Kayla. "Is that a peanut stuck in your beard?" asked Gaia. Before Gilrine could put his hands into his beard, Gaia helped him. Geesh, Gilrine awkwardly tried to smile after she helped remove the peanut. Little did he know that Gaia was not removing any peanuts, but putting a spider into his bushy beard. It was indeed risky, but she took the risk to know why Gilrine was keeping a mountain troll in the Black Forest. Since a lousy-mouthed man like Gilrine was keeping it a secret, she knew whatever the reason he was keeping a mountain troll, it must be something very important. Oh, Professor Steinmeier, Gaia felt a chill running through her spine. Her heart almost jumped out of her chest cavity when she heard Kayla calling just after she placed a spider into Gilrine's beer to spy on them. Yes, Professor Kayla. She turned back again, controlling any signs of nervousness from showing up on her face. You are on detention duty today. If anyone received detention, take them to the Black Forest and make them harvest Blackfoot mushrooms. Just do me a favor, don't let the students go past the Red Oaks. Human, get yourself a detention. After leaving Headmistress Kayla's room, she contacted Michael through the earpiece in the girls' dormitory of Warrior House. Victoria was practicing her sword skills by slashing and dashing a dummy, while Edith was laying on the bed complaining, "You know, we could have died." Most of us who are taking the combat class aren't warriors. We want to learn about defending ourselves, not how to get yourself killed. Edith was pretty shaken up by the mountain troll. They were one of the few students who saw the mountain troll too close and barely escaped. We have to complain about Professor Steinmeier to someone. You're just overreacting, Victoria calmly said. She was right. You can't learn combat by reading books. If we can't survive a mountain troll, we don't deserve to be here. Think about it. The next time when you're being chased by a mountain troll, you would not be as scared as now. Knock. 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 Their conversation was interrupted by someone who was knocking on the door outside. Who is there? Asked Edith with an irritated voice. Trouble, Victoria muttered. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.